Cantrell,
Present.
Commissioner Tilka,
Here.
Commissioner McLaughlin. And Christina's supposed to be on her way.
Okay, there we go. First thing to do is to verify public comment. Would anybody like to speak for public comment? All right, nobody's stepping forward, so let's move forward to the approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion for approval.
May I make a suggestion for a correction?
Which page?
Let's see, here it is. It says members absent Judith Ann McLaughlin, but I believe that my term had expired and I hadn't yet taken the oath of office for a new term, so I don't think I was a member of the commission, so
Which ones are we talking about?
I'd appreciate if that could be deleted and a new.
If it's October the 11th, the term didn't expire until October the 30th.
And the minutes were from November 14th, yeah, so,
And you were reappointed on the 8th of November. Remember, we sent it to you and you weren't able to come on the 8th? And the 14th, we emailed.
okay. But I hadn't yet taken my oath, but that's still,
We had it on the agenda for you to take the oath that night. And you had emailed and you couldn't come. And then on the 20th, the 14th, you weren't going to be.
That was in
14th,
DC.
Yeah, 14th.
yeah, I was traveling for both of those. Okay. I just didn't want to be marked absent if I wasn't on the board.
You okay to move
Yeah,
forward
the
then?
term expired October the 30th, so technically you were still on the roster.
Okay.
For
Paul,
November 14th.
Paul motion for, yeah,
Okay.
Paul motion to accept it. Can I second it? I'm allowed to do that, right?
Yes.
I like to second the minutes. You want to, so you need to call, do we have to call anything, or do we just move forward?
Commissioner Tilka,
Yes. Yes.
Chair Cantrell,
Yes.
Commissioner McLaughlin,
Can I abstain, or does that throw things off because it's not a quorum?
as the attorney had explained it, the minutes were in the packet. If you were given access to the minutes, you are required to vote.
Okay, I did review them, I'll say yes. And you're saying that you can't, that I was a member even though I wasn't sworn in yet for my new term?
You are going to be sworn in just like today. You will be sworn in right next, right? Actually, we should have did the oath first, but it doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
I'm wondering if I can even vote if I'm not sworn in yet.
I don't know the answer. I'm just going in order. I guess maybe we should have moved that first. Is that what we should have
We can
done?
do that. We can hold off on the vote for her to swear in. If you want to raise your right hand, Judith, and repeat after me. I, Judith Ann McLaughlin,
I, Judith Ann McLaughlin,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the
of the
Constitution
United States,
of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Florida,
the Constitution of the State of Florida,
the Charter and the Code of Ordinances
the Charter and the Code of Ordinances
of the City of Madeira Beach,
of the City of Madeira Beach,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
my duties as a member of the Civil Service Commission
my duties as a member of the Civil Service Commission
of the City of Madeira Beach
of the City of Madeira Beach
to the best of my ability
to the best of my ability
in the manner provided by law.
in the manner provided by law.
We're glad that you're continuing to serve.
Thank you so much, I am too.
And you can sign this before you leave.
Okay.
So should we move back to approval of minutes at this point?
Now, we're waiting on Commissioner Tilka,
Yes.
Chair Cantrell,
Yes.
Commissioner McLaughlin.
Yes.
The motion carried 3-0.
There we go. Thank you for doing that. No, it's all right. It's a process. The HR report. Megan, are you online?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything you'd like to share with us on the HR report?
There's nothing much different other than I'm getting ready to post a firefighter position when Chief is ready.
Sounds great. All right. Okay. Anyone got questions? Yep, okay. Old business, we're back to the draft personnel policy 2020. We last left off at, I want to make sure I'm in the right spot.
We're picking up on section 4E.
Or E, salary basis compensation questions?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's got a flag in it.
I'm using the old packet, not the new one right now.
There you go.
I don't
It's the
think.
2020, but it's right here. It's the same one in there.
It's the same one?
She just made it separate or something.
Okay, there we go. There's, start here, that's what's red. Okay, all right, I get it. Okay, the last meeting we were in, we actually decided not to read it, that we would actually go straight to that section, take a second to review it and see if there's anything we'd like to discuss. So for this section, E, salary basis compensation questions, is there anything any of you would like to bring up? And to be honest, I gotta pull it up on my computer because that's where all my notes are.
So Jerry, I got a lot out of you reading the work.
Say it again?
I say I got a lot out of when you read
Yeah.
the.
Would you
Yeah, same.
prefer I read? Because I'm okay with it. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to proceed forward with how everyone did the last
The way to
time.
go fast would be just read the first sentence in each paragraph. And then if we need to like stop and, I don't know, but I think that the first sentence to me is what I read.
Okay.
Or read it.
Salary basis compensation. I'm still trying to figure out where we're at, guys.
Okay, or read the whole thing, but, or don't, so.
Well, I think one of the things that, we've discussed is that if we make the chair read all of this, we're going to be here for 2 years.
Okay,
And everybody is presumed to have read in advance of coming, and sort of put any questions you have in your mind. So obviously it's up to you all, but it's not going to move things along if the chair reads
well,
everything.
then I withdraw my request.
How about you, Juthan? What are you? Okay. I can tell you that for section E, I have no notes on it. I do have notes from the next one, though. You guys okay to move on to F? All right, so next page, I have page 4-11, section F, forms. Inside of here, we've had a lot of discussion about review of forms with Civil Service Commission. And I know that, Mr. Ashenfelder, you're putting some verbiage, and I believe earlier on in the document at this point, that's saying that forms need to be reviewed by Civil Service Commission prior to implementation. If that's the case, do we need to list anything inside of these 3 paragraphs to state that they need to be reviewed by Civil Service Commission before they go into effect?
Again, the language that I'm going to put at the appropriate place at the beginning says, no forms and no procedures are to be implemented prior to them being reviewed by the Civil Service Commission. And so then that will cover everything in the policy where it mentions a form or a procedure.
Okay, all right. So I really don't need to voice any concerns I have on F. Does anyone else have other concerns? So I'm going to write a note on my document, though.
Did he say that he's going to include it there, or?
I think he said, where would you put that, Mr. Eschenfelder?
At the beginning of the policy, or I'm also looking at putting it right in the ordinance, where you guys are discussed and your authority is discussed. Because I'm thinking if we put it in the ordinance, that carries even greater weight in terms of making sure that you guys aren't circumvented with the development of any procedures or forms. But either or, I've got a note, and you'll be, just procedurally, when we're done with this, you'll see the entire policy come back with all the red line of what we've decided. And then you'll also see the accompanying ordinance where you'll have that language.
Yeah, the ordinance, the manual is the attachment to the ordinance. It is the ordinance on that.
Okay, all right. Okay, are we ready to move on to section 5, classification and pay plans? So part A, general policies. I made several notes here. If either of you like to say anything to start out with, I'm welcome to hear it, but I do have things I want to state on this one. Okay. In paragraph 1, there's things I have concern with about, so this, I'm going to read this one, all right? The Madeira Beach Civil Service Commission, in cooperation with the city manager, is charged with the ongoing development of the Madeira Beach classification and pay plans. This includes periodic studies relating to equitable classification categories and pay ranges. The goal of the Board of Commissioners is to maintain sound plans, providing classification and pay structures that are fair, equitable, and systematic compared with other governmental jurisdictions in the private sector. This enhances Madeira Beach's ability to attract and retain competent employees to provide efficient services to the citizens of Madeira Beach. As I've read through this document, I just want to throw it out there in the beginning, I don't see anywhere where there's a policy that talks about when a person's brought in, if they meet the minimum requirements, and they typically would be started at the median of that pay scale range. And then there should be a structured process that guarantees everybody is treated equitably. So if you have the minimum requirement's 3 years of experience, but you have 7 years experience, it allows the city manager to immediately justify some type of increase in pay based upon that. Or if they have extra credentialing that is not necessarily required for the position for the minimum, but yet you know it will enhance their skills for that job, then there should be an opportunity for the city manager to compensate for those. Because all those things, the experience and as well as the knowledge learned and gained from learning, taking actually accredited courses, whatever the case is, certifications, those help out positions. I don't know the proper place to put that, even if it's in here, but I don't see any place where it sets up how a pay structure would be accomplished. And that leaves me a little concerned. I don't want to be a person that would make it difficult for human resources or the city manager to do their job. But I do believe that if you're going to make it fair and equitable, if it's written, that's the best way to do it. Whether that's this policy or it's a different policy, I don't know the answer. The other thing going on from here, I look at the second paragraph. The Civil Service Commission, working with Human Resources, will periodically examine, by use of staff, consultants, and such other resources available, market conditions, comparative wage data for relevant public and private sector employees. And based upon the results of this examination, we'll make a written recommendation to the city manager concerning wage adjustments. I believe that should also include Board of Commissioners, because our job is also to report to the Board of Commissioners. So it shouldn't just be to the city manager, it should also be to the Board of Commissioners, in my opinion. Would you guys have any concerns with that? All right. Next sentence. Based upon such written recommendations concerning the need for market equity adjustments, the city manager may propose a budget including funds sufficient to implement such adjustment concurrent with new fiscal year, and may implement same upon budget approval. My guess here is that this is a normal process, and this is basically what you have to do. And I, like, Mr. Gomez, if you could guide me on this, I'd really appreciate it. Because I know we're actually asking for this compensation or classification and pay plan. Look, you're preparing an RFP for it. And what is the normal process there? Because if they come back and say like it was the pay adjustment that's recently been authorized or discussed for the fire department, I don't see how that could immediately be implemented across the board for every employee of the city. It would harm the budget. That's what I would think. You would have to take more than a year to implement if there was a scale of an adjustment like for the fire department. And I don't know what the right answer is there. I don't want to tie your hands.
But I'm not, what's your question, though? I'm sorry.
It says, based upon such written recommendations concerning the need for market equity adjustments, the city manager may propose a budget including funds sufficient to implement such adjustments concurrent with the new fiscal year, and may implement same upon budget approval. So if I'm reading this, it gives you time to try and prepare a budget, correct? So it's not like this immediate, you've got to do it now, and it puts you in a really hard spot?
And it's going to take several months to get results back anyway.
Yeah.
And we start our budget process in normally around January, so.
Okay, so it
This
doesn't,
this doesn't take just 1 month or 2 months in the implementation. We would not do any adjustments going forward as a result of the RFP or whatever study until next fiscal year.
that makes sense.
It would be part of the next budget process.
I was concerned that that was like it's going to force you to do some weird stuff and act now, and I wanted to make sure that that's not correct, right? So that's, okay. Last sentence, actually really not the second, there's the second to last, I'm not worried about. Last sentence, based upon such, where is this at? I got something here which is on mine, but it's not. Based upon such written recommendations concerning the need for market equity adjustments, the city manager may propose a budget including funds sufficient to implement unresolved adjustments concurrent with the new fiscal year and may implement same upon budget approval. I don't know why I wrote that in there. I think this looks like I didn't write that. Why does mine read different? I added a word to this, but I don't see this. Oh, I see what, okay. Because I made this edit a while ago. Sorry about that, guys. And my concern is a word, and I honestly, I don't see the word being an issue with that line. And then I don't have any other concerns on this page. Does anybody else? So, back to my first concern, if we're looking at this and we're talking about pay plans when people are hired in, the goal is to put them at the middle of the pay range. That should always be the goal. And then you have some type of plan where if you're gonna give them pay raises in there, say like the average is 2.5%, 3% a year, that within 10 years, they can be 3/4 of the way through the pay range. That's typical business that I'm familiar with. But I don't see anything in this policy anywhere that talks about how pay plans are structured. When you bring them in, I saw some places in the older one where it said the city manager could do quite a bit with leeway, but I don't see a structure for it. And I would like to, as we go through this, I'd like to come back to this and talk about how should pay structures be set up. So if they meet the minimum requirements, they get the mid-range on the pay scale.
At 10 years, they would be 75%.
10 years it would be the
Fully
goal, but I
vested.
mean, it depends upon how wide that range is, because we haven't seen a classification, so it's not,
That's a long time.
yeah, we don't know. Yeah,
You had that listed on your ongoing list.
yeah, for that pay plan classification, and we just did the RFP, so we started that process, so that's
Yeah, they're
happening.
working
So
on that now.
I think we need to see that before we could even
Okay.
figure out where things should be. But we could talk, if they meet the minimum requirements for the job, it starts at mid-range. I think we could talk that if they have extra years beyond the minimum requirements, they get a certain amount of pay increase based upon those extra years. And if they have extra credentialing that's beyond the minimum for that job classification, they can get certain types of pay raises based on that too. So I just don't know what is fair in every sense of that. I know what I got in other jobs, but they weren't municipal. Yeah. Do you guys have concerns or thought on that?
I feel like we should wait until we get the study and then figure out how to include that in here.
That might be something to return to this then, right? Claire, can we put a note down there on business to tackle as after the pay classification and the classification and pay plan comes through? We'd like to address starting wages and increases beyond that minimum, the median pay scale, and how that should be structured. Is that appropriate phrase for it, guys? Yeah. Okay. Then, you got that, Claire?
Yes.
Okay, B, administration. That's on page 5-2.
Okay with that.
In the first paragraph, I agree that the recommendations for assignment to authorized positions, the classified titles and pay grades, and recommendations for changes to existing classifications and pay assignments are made by the city manager, made to the city manager by the Civil Service Commission, and the Human Resources staff. I would like to, we're not tied to Human Resources saying that we have to do something, or they have to agree with us in that sentence, right?
Correct. It is just, both of you serve as a recommendatory source for the manager.
Okay.
Should it be and/or?
I think it should be and/or. But if you put it as and/or, it could circumvent the Civil Service Commission. Okay, let's go back to, the way is it section 5? Section 5 of the city charter for Madeira Beach. Under that, there's hey, how you doing? There's I need to go to the city charter, guys. Can I look this up online without it being an issue? Is that all right?
Yep.
Okay. I haven't looked at this in a while, so I need to see it to make sure I'm reading it properly.
Yeah, it's part of your rules to do that.
It is part of our rules, isn't it? It's, I think it falls on us.
Yeah,
I need to look at the charter.
let me pull it up.
Oh, I don't have that little binder. Okay. The classification, so number 1, it's, section 5.7, C, personnel rules. Item 1, the classification of all classified city positions based upon the duties, authority, and responsibility of each position, with adequate provisions for classification of any position whenever warranted by circumstance. Going back to personnel rules, the Civil Service Commission shall prepare personnel rules. When concurred by the city manager, this rule should be proposed to the Board of Commissioners. So I think this should be changed to where that, because this doesn't comply with that, the way that reads. The recommendations for assignment of authorized positions, classifications, pay grades, shall, for changes to existing classification pay grade assignments are made to the, we're on page 5-2. Yep. I don't want to circumvent the city manager from coming to us or Human Resources coming to us and saying, hey, we think this needs to be changed. But not only that, we need to work with Robin or whoever's in Robin's position to make sure that we both agree. And I believe it should be the Civil Service Commission that takes it to the Board of Commissioners, that this is what we'd like to have done. But I wholeheartedly believe that's got to be in conjunction with the city manager. We shouldn't overlook that person's desires, because there may be specific reasons not to do things.
You might want to propose me a $20 an hour raise, but it may not be in the budget.
Yeah. Recommendations for assignment and pay grades. The way that I need to go back to this again.
Is Rob on the line?
Yeah, Rob's online.
Okay.
Yeah. When I go to the charter, section 5, 5.7, there's 5.6, 5.7, we look at personnel. The Civil Service Commission shall prepare rules when concurred by the city manager, the rules shall be proposed to the Board of Commissioners. And under that, it says the classification, it says, these rules shall include but are not limited to the classification of all classified positions based upon duties, authority, and responsibility of each position, with adequate provisions for classification of any position whenever warranted by circumstances. So it really is not, we make it to the city manager and the city manager approves it. I do think we should notify the city manager that there's a change, or allow the city manager to notify us that there's a change, because we may not see something he sees or she sees. How do we phrase this to where that it's, the responsibility falls upon the Board of Commissioners, but yet we don't circumvent the city manager in this case? How would you phrase that, Mr. Ashenfelder?
I'm still not exactly understanding what your question
The way
is.
this reads
So-
is that the city manager, the assignments are made to the city manager by the Civil Service Commission and the Human Resources staff. Any such changes for administration positions shall become effective upon approval of the city manager. That's not what the charter reads. It reads that that's the Board of Commissioners. So that very last part definitely needs to be Board of Commissioners, but it shouldn't be city manager.
So we have to really carefully look at the entire thing in its totality, all right?
Yeah?
So if you look at the very beginning, Section 5, subsection A, first paragraph, the Madeira Beach Civil Service Commission, in cooperation with the manager, is charged with the ongoing development of Madeira Beach classification and pay plans. This includes periodic studies related to classification categories and pay ranges.
Where's
Civil
that?
Service Commission, working with the Human Resource Department, will periodically examine these classifications and pay plans. So, and then the Civil Service Commission, working with city manager, is charged with creating recommended classifications and pay plans, which is the second to last paragraph. So you are creating the classification and pay plan. You understand that?
Yes, based on this, it's saying that we're making the recommendation to the city manager. That's correct.
Well, but on 5A, second to the last paragraph, it provides that you, the Civil Service Commission, are charged with creating the recommended classifications and pay plans, subject to budgets approved by the commissioners.
Okay, but then you come over to the second page, Part B, administration, and it says that recommendations for assignment of authorized positions to classification titles and pay grades, and recommendations for changes to existing classification and pay grade assignments are made to the city manager by the Civil Service and Human Resources staff. That makes sense. Any such changes for administration positions shall become effective upon once approved by the city manager. I get it now. Okay, so you're right, you do got to read it in totality. If I look at the individual, it gets confusing, but when I read that over there, it makes sense. Thank you for pointing that out.
Sure, and just, in plain English, the big picture overall classification and pay plan is yours to own, but which body goes where, all that kind of stuff, that's kind of got to be, the manager. But certainly you guys retain on that 5B1 the recommendatory authority to recommend that the manager do this, that, or the other.
Thank you. I'm making a note here so I don't forget this. Again, thank you for pointing that out. Does anyone else have concerns? I can bring up lots of stuff, but I don't want to just be the only one talking.
I had one question on 5B2 in general. I I had noted that it talks about reduction and staffing changes, I'm guessing in adding personnel, which makes sense. What about employee promotions that would ultimately increase the budget? Is that something that gets submitted to the Board of Commissioners, or is that not necessary?
Well, a promotion doesn't go to the commission. A promotion is something that the CEO does, but the promotion would need to fit within the commission's overall annual adopted budget. And so realistically, how that works is if a promotion occurs, and I doubt that the budgets for the department are that tight, but if a promotion should bust the budget of, say, sanitation, the manager would have to bring a budget amendment forward for the commission's approval to move money around so that that person could be paid.
Okay, is that covered?
Does that answer the question?
Yes, it made me think of that as I was reading it. Is it adequately allow us to do what we need as stated without including anything to that nature? I would think so.
Yeah, I mean, again, what 2 really more gets to is if the manager wants to come forward and say, I need 7 more employees, so that we've grown, whatever. It's that's going to require an increase in the budget, so that's got to go to the Board of Commissioners. But if the manager says, the world has changed, we've started outsourcing this particular function, so I need to reduce the city staff by 3, that does not require an increase in the budget, and so he does that just as manager.
Okay. That seems to make sense to me.
Okay there?
I had one other question. Had you guys gone through paragraph 3 at all, notwithstanding the foregoing?
Go ahead back, it's okay to go back to paragraph 3.
Reported wage
Are you
rate?
guys okay with that? Yeah. It's page 5-1.
Okay.
Notwithstanding the foregoing, any awarded wage rate increases based on a merit evaluation system, which system must be separately established by resolution, shall be implemented based on the calendar year. Trying to remember what the
This,
question was.
that in the parentheses there, we just brought this up in discussion where we wanted to talk about how do you base the minimum, if they meet the minimum requirements of the job, where do they start out in the pay scale range? How do you give increases on that first employment spot, or whether they're transferring to a new position, whatever, how do you give increases in pay based upon exceeding the minimum requirements?
Okay.
And I haven't seen it anywhere in this document where it's mentioned, so
Talk about it
we'll
later.
come back to that
Okay.
once we finish doing other stuff, correct?
Perfect.
And part of that has to do with the fact that we need to get the classification and pay plan returned to us before we can really tackle that completely.
Okay, then that's it for me on
All right.
section 5A and B.
There's one thing, and I don't know if this is the right thing to put in this policy, and I don't know if it should be in A, it should be in B, or if it should be somewhere else, or if it even needs to be in the document. I think there may be times where it may be necessary to hire an employee base from the candidates that are available that don't completely meet the minimum requirements, but are actually very close to that. And when I look at employees that are being transferred or reassigned from within, is there a reason to be concerned that they meet the minimum requirements for the position they're being placed in?
That to me, I think is clear. Throughout this, like you're saying you're transferring to a different position? I think it says in here, is there a particular area? I thought it says
I
that.
just don't know where that should go. It's a note that I made, but I don't know where it should go. There's, in section 4E, there's salary basis compensation questions, but I don't think that is where that belongs.
We talked about this when we talked about like temporary employees and probationary employees and stopgap, like OPS, those kinds of things.
We discussed some tangential items on the last meeting where, I don't remember the name of it, Mr. Gomez, but when you go out and you do your background checks on employees, you go through an agency and they verify minimum requirements are obtained, certifications, years, education, all that. Is that covered in that aspect of it, making sure that employees meet the minimum requirements?
Yes.
How about 5C7, so 5.6, I guess, page 5.6?
Transfer lateral transfers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Does that look like, so you could just add language in there that says that they need to undergo the same, same verification process as external candidates?
Yeah.
What page is that?
It's
5.6.
The last sentence on that's concerning.
Is that in the ballpark of what you're talking about?
Yes, that's in the
Okay.
ballpark. That's probably where it should belong, where they need to meet the minimum requirements, which would be, it's not CompTIA. What did you say the name of the agency was that you currently use for background test?
We use Paycom.
ACOM, that's it.
Okay, so I think if you just add something to the effect of need to meet the minimum requirements set forth for that job position, that should adequately cover that.
Okay. Can we take that back up when we get over to that point then?
I think so.
Okay. Are you guys okay with that? Is everybody okay to move on to section 5C application?
Well, let me just go back to the question of the second to the last paragraph. I'm sorry, the third to the last paragraph on 5A,
Third.
where it has parentheses, which system must be separately established by resolution. Okay, bear with me.
Yes.
Mhm.
So again, you have to read the entire policy, in totality. What that parentheses gets to is when we get to section 5C, number 11, pay for performance, it requires that a pay for performance program be adopted by a separate resolution so that the program can be developed and set forth of how it's going to work, and then that gets approved by the Board of Commissioners, but it's adopted by a separate resolution so that could be easily adjusted over time as opposed to having to amend the personnel policy every time it's tweaked. So that's why the parentheses is in the first area, adopted by separate resolution, because 5C11 requires a pay for performance program to be adopted by resolution.
That's by the Board of Commissioners.
I think my note
Correct.
was that it could just be stated more clearly, and I think that may help. I think anytime there's a question, especially between several people, it might just be good to review the language. I would think that could be stated like, starting with wage rate increases based on merit evaluation systems are established separately by resolution, something like that. Make it's a little bit convoluted in my opinion and difficult to follow. So I think that could be stated more clearly what the intent is there.
It's almost like a split infinitive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm surprised I even
I made a
remember
note
that
to
word.
try to make that sentence more clear.
Thank you.
That's from A, 5A, third paragraph.
Notwithstanding the foregoing.
Rephrase that.
Yes, 5A, third paragraph.
Okay. Are everybody okay to move on to page 5-3? C, application. All right.
I had a minor one. The period in 1C in the parentheses should be outside of the parentheses at no time. I think that period, if you want to check, should be outside of the parentheses. And then I had no further questions on this page.
I think B, we actually, 1B, we covered in a different conversation, which provides a lot of flexibility for the city managers, so that way they can make some choices that they need to make, correct? We covered something similar to this in a past conversation.
That's right.
Such requests.
Okay. Two is section C2. This is the item we're talking about, how should the employees be paid? So we'll readdress this once we get that back, correct? Before you stepped in, we had a conversation about, it doesn't, there's no way in here where you talk about, nowhere in the document where you talk about when employees hired on, if they meet the minimum requirements for the job, where should they be paid within that scale? Here it says minimum. I've been in other places where you try to target them for the mid-range, all right? Based upon meeting certain requirements, if you have extra years of experience, you can get pay raises above the minimum from that. You can, if you have extra education beyond the minimum, you can do that. Extra credentialing, you could give them raises above that. But there's like a minimum threshold you start out with, and very clear guidelines on how you adjust pay scale, so everybody, it's implemented equitably for everyone.
Okay,
So-
did the city weigh in on that? Is it, I didn't really take an issue with starting lowest, and it allows flexibility if there's better, if there's, something that makes them, you should not start at the bottom, but
I think
I
it
guess
depends upon-
that's more the managerial
Yeah, I
function.
consider the experience and stuff. If they have credentials and been doing it, because it's hard to find somebody in public records and all. And if they have zero knowledge, then that's basically minimum. But if they have certifications, had their bachelor's or whatever, and they've been working, whether it's a medical field or this, that warrants in the mid-range. To me, it does. Because I tried it one time and I couldn't get anybody. And then the city manager, the other city manager before this one, he raised it up, and then I was able to hire somebody.
So, I think the way this is drafted is to start with a base, and the base really is that they will be at the minimal assigned range. And so if you think about it philosophically, when you set up a pay and classification plan, which is a separate document that lists each job description, what the pay range is and all that, your market study will have already told you what is the minimum that someone with no experience just starting out is going to make, and then what is the top off of that particular career range. And so that's such a minimum and maximum. And so you start with a presumption that somebody coming in new is not going to be all that experienced, whatnot. But then, of course, it's often the case that you get an applicant that's mid-career or whatnot, and they're willing to come work for you, but they won't accept minimum part of the range. And so that's where the department head will say, gee whiz, under 5C1B, I need to depart from the normal parameters of this because I've got a candidate here who's a really good candidate. I want to bring him on board, but they want mid-range. And the manager says, okay, I totally understand. I'll authorize you to offer that candidate mid-range. I would caution against what Chair Cantrell is describing is a very unionized, you see in the union contracts where they want to create step plans and everybody steps at the same time, regardless of whether they're a good employee, a mediocre employee. And so it's a business decision to be sure, and it's up to you all how you recommend. But I counsel against that kind of a plan unless a union forces it in bargaining, because managers need to be able to interact individually with their workforce to decide what is it worth to me at any given time. I've got to safeguard, these are tax dollars, right? And so why would I create a policy that says everybody who's coming in automatically starts at the middle of the range? I could have hired some of these people at the lower part of the range, thus preserving my budget, and they'd be happy and I'd be happy. So if you create a policy that says, well, we're going to set a low, but we're going to utterly ignore that and say that the default is to start everybody at the mid, it doesn't make much logical sense, and it could lead to wasting money. So again, you don't have to make any of those decisions today. You're going to see the pay study that eventually comes from the consultant. But how I drafted this, it sort of is from that philosophy of let's start low, and then if to get a particular candidate we need to go higher, then we go higher. The authority is totally there, but it's a case-by-case, candidate-by-candidate situation.
Thank you for that. I'd like to clarify some things that you stated. By no means am I requesting we do anything that's an implementation of a unionized structure. I've been in positions where I've actually been on the board of directors, and for that position there was a minimum range that you got hired at, and then if you met certain requirements, you got an increase in your pay based upon the years of experience you had. But it was done for every employee in the company, and we were not a unionized company. It provides a fair and equitable range of salaries for employees based upon meeting minimum requirements. By no means is that a unionized position. No means did I mean that to be that way. The other thing is, if it comes back and we get the pay plan and they say that, okay, you know what, this is the minimum, this is the maximum, most employees start quarter way up the scale, that's something we need to take into consideration. If they say everybody starts at the bottom, that's something we need to take into consideration. When I said halfway, it's an idea. I don't know where it should be, and I think I was very clear in stating that. We need to look at the pay scale and the compensation, that classification plan before we make those decisions. But I really, really want to stress, this is not me saying union by any means. It's a method to assure and guarantee that every employee is treated equitably. That's more important. That's all I got to say on that.
I'd say let's hold off on that decision, but I mean, for me, I think that we're, if we focus on the bigger picture of what we should actually be doing there, I mean, I might actually differ in opinion on your stance there, but I'd say let's just wait until we get the study. I think we've heard both sides of the fence there, and understand why you're saying what you are, but I'd also defer if Robin doesn't mind, city manager, what do you typically do in practice right now? So are you following where we are in conversation? What do you do in practice?
We typically hire at the entry, the
Okay.
minimum, unless a department head approaches me and makes the case for an individual based again on experience, knowledge levels, et cetera.
Okay. And I don't think it's prohibiting you from doing that here. It just, it's sense that you're starting at the beginning and then you go up from there. So is that?
I agree with you, and I don't know what the beginning is. Until we get that plan, we're not going to know what the beginning is. And I definitely don't want to get in the way of whatever he's got to do. But if there's a structured process, nobody could ever come back and say,
Sure.
I wasn't paid equitably with this other person. You know what the structure is. It's always going to be the structure.
But keep in mind, employees also know what the salary is.
I understand that.
The range, yeah.
But yeah, they're not, well, yeah, we're advertising a range, but that's why cities advertise, here's the starting pay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Say
That
they
makes
meet
it easier.
The thing is say that they meet all the minimum requirements, and that starting pay for minimum requirements is $20 an hour, regardless of whatever it is, $20 an hour. But yet they have a 10 years extra experience, you can give a percentage over that for that 10 years experience. And there's a certain percentage for every year that it makes it more equitable. Because you have to look at what would a person that came in, what would they have received for those pay raises over those years? And then you could actually set yourself up to where you're more equitable with other municipalities and where their pay structure is at. So you don't, and you understand, I think you understand what I'm saying here is, you have someone with 10 years, you don't bring them in making $20 an hour if that's the minimum pay for the range. 10 years means you need to be working the job for 3 years, who knows, you know? But if you've got 10 years experience, you need to look at what those pay range percentages would be so you can compete with someone else. Otherwise, you're not going to keep qualified employees.
I think in practice and we've been having discussions in our company in this realm, if they're overqualified, they probably shouldn't be hired in at that classification. So that's kind of they should actually be at that next level. So if what we've been discussing is you shouldn't really hire overqualified employees, which can be difficult in practice, but just to add to that.
Well, and I think another thing, to consider is when you start talking about years of experience, and you all probably have seen it in your own lives and careers, you could have somebody who has 15 years of quote unquote experience, but it has been at an employer who hasn't trained them well. They're not really a good performer. So the fact that they held the position for 15 years doesn't necessarily make them 15% better or 50% better than a candidate who's starting from scratch. You've got to look at each of the candidates. I think as well, when you talk about bringing someone in at or near the mid-range, if you're looking to retain that employee long-term and give them a career path where they are getting raises every year, if you start them at mid-term, even though you didn't have to, because they would have been willing to accept lower, closer to the start range, then they're going to hit their cap earlier in their career arc, and now they're stuck. And now they're not allowed to get any more raises because they're at the top of their range for their job. And then they start to get resentful as other people get raises, but they can't. So you have to sort of look at how the whole system plays out. You also have to look at what's called pay compression. If you have a lot of incumbents in a particular job, and they've slowly been getting their 3%, 2.5%, and then you hire newer people, and they bump right up to what they're making, right off the bat, those people who have been with us for a long time start to get resentful and say, well, gee whiz, I've been here for 12 years, and I'm at $20 an hour. You just gave this guy $19.50 an hour, and he hasn't been here for but a week. So it's really important, I feel, to not create a system where there's just all these charts with, if you've got this, this, and this, then you will get this pay. There should be some, the marketplace of, at any given point in time, okay, what are you willing to work for? What am I willing to pay? And the employee and the employer bargain for that wage. And if the employee says, yes, I will come work for you, then that employee by definition is satisfied.
Okay.
Okay, I understand what
move
you're
on from
saying.
that.
Yeah, we can move on
Had
from that.
good conversation.
We definitely need to come back to this, though, because what you're saying is correct, Mr. Eschenfelder. The director and the city manager should be able to bargain within a certain range of what that salary would be. But there should be a structure that keeps it equitable. Get rid of the mid-range thing that I said, because I don't know what it's supposed to be. And I was very clear that I don't know what it's supposed to be. So the reality is if you have somebody, and I don't think, this is not Mr. Gomez by any means, But say you have a city manager that wants to bring in somebody they've been friends with for 20 years, and they want to automatically go right up to the mid-range, and that person's not truly qualified for the position, all right? I mean, they may meet some of the minimum stuff, but not all of it. That person may get a mid-pay range, all right? But yet, if you go back and you do the analysis of what the person comes to the job with, they're not entitled to it. There should be a check there.
So doesn't it
that's-
say here, it says that you're going to start them at the lowest level, and then anybody, you
But
know,
but there's spots in here where it says that they can go over it. As a matter of
but
fact,
you
when
have
you
to
go,
submit to HR.
you have to submit to HR.
So they have to justify it,
Where does HR report to right now?
the
And then
city.
they always report to the city manager. HR always reports to the city manager, there's no doubt about that. But there's really a direct link right now at this moment, and that's nothing against the people who are there. But if it was other people in that position, there's not a stopgap to prevent it from happening.
So they'd be not following the protocol.
It could
then.
be bypassed.
Well, so, but what we're doing is setting forth, that, to me, this is clear. That This is accomplishing, in essence, what you're looking for. It says they start at the minimum. You can't go above midpoint even, but without rating a full justification to HR. So you sound like you're concerned about not following the system, which I don't think, unless you're saying you want to add a safeguard here, which we, recommend one, but to me, this system's very clear and equitable. They start at the lowest, you can justify higher. So it is, I think you're saying, I'm a little confused because I think it's accomplishing what you're after.
But if you want to go beyond the mid-range, there should be a scale you could look at that says, yes, this is equitable for every other person that's been employed. So Joe comes off the street, the job's minimum is $20 an hour, but it only requires 3 years of experience, but Joe has 15 years of experience. Set aside that he's worked someplace for 15 years and they didn't get rid of him because he wasn't worth having at their facility. That I find hard to be a thing that would happen. But maybe that happened. He still has the 15 years experience, and if you have people that are with you and they have 15 years experience, he shouldn't be paid $20 an hour. He should be paid closer to what they're making, so it's literally an equitable pay scale.
So you're saying, are you,
I'm not proposing that we start on that at that has to be at this level, because I don't know what this level is. And when we get the classification and pay plan information back, we'll have a better idea of that.
right, I guess
That will have a
I'm
better
confused
idea.
by your intent and what you would change here.
If here it's saying prior to extending, you're right, a candidate. If you go down below, you look at advertised promotions down here. So advertised promotions occurs when a current employee is selected through an open competition for position in a higher classification, subject to available resources and market condition. Employees promoted as a result of advertising the classification in a higher pay grade will generally receive the greater of 5% increase or entry level of the new pay grade. Directors may request higher increases for extenuating circumstances, but may not be offered to an employer prior to human resource staff's review and approved of the written documentation supporting the request. So you can still go higher. There's no, you have to meet these conditions based upon, did you get certain certifications, or do you have extra certifications for the job? Do you exceed the minimum education requirement for the job? Do you exceed the minimum years of experience for the job? Those are qualifications you would look at to increase a person's pay when you're bringing them in. If they have a certification, it doesn't matter if they have 15 years. A nationally recognized certification has a significance of its own.
So you'd like a more defined process by which you alter a salary? Is that what you're looking for?
That it makes it equitable for everyone. So, yeah, there are people here that have been here for a long time. We acknowledge that some of them may be below market, but we're doing what we have to correct that at this point, which is going out asking for the information. We're going to take it back to the city manager. City manager will take that information, prepare a budget, present it to the commission, the Board of Commissioners. Board of Commissioners will handle that aspect of it. But we try to bring them all up to a level that makes them more likely to stay with us in the long run, all right? But what it doesn't address is when you bring somebody into a new position, how are you setting that up? This says, we're going to pay them what we feel they're worth, rather than saying they met these criteria to show their worth. It doesn't make it so that you have to pay this person the same way you did this person. There's not an equitable. You can say that, okay, this person came in, they have 4 extra years, I want to give them a 10% bump on the minimum. But you can also go back and say, this person came in, they've got 10 years' experience, I only want to give them a 5% bump on the minimum. It doesn't make it equitable.
But does that, I mean, that's negotiation and you're talking 1% at
That's-
this point. I
No,
feel
it's
like we're
5%.
getting-
There would be a 5%
You're saying
difference.
4 versus 5% is what you just used as an example. I think we have to, so if there's a way, I think we're kind of circling on the same topic. So I would say if you have a recommendation for how you would achieve that, is it that they submit a specific by resolution form or because I feel like we have to come up with a solution here. To me, it's giving some structure, but you're saying it's not giving enough structure. So what would you recommend
When we
to
get
address it?
When we get that pay classification and the pay plan and classification back, I think it's easier to take a look at that point.
Okay.
Right now, it would just be a shot in the air.
Okay.
We wouldn't know where we're targeting.
Then let's proceed. And we
Yeah.
got a lot to get through, I would say.
Is this, I think what you're saying is
Yeah.
valid too, so I don't want to, I just.
No offense, I'm
Yeah.
trying to get us to,
Yeah.
for me, I think I understand your point. I think it's become clear what you're after, and then I would just say, how are we, what's your recommendation to improve it? And if it's wait until we get the classification, then let's wait and revisit.
It really needs to wait till then.
Okay.
It really, do you guys agree? It needs to wait till then. All right, thanks, I appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay. So, we're still dealing with new hire employment promotions, demotions, temporary assignments, reclassification. So should we do this like one page at a time? Are you guys okay? Because it keeps going. Are we ready to move on to 5-4?
I am, yes.
5-4 starts with internal promotion occurs, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I have one note there. For me, the last note, I, in theory or premise, don't, I think that internal promotions are a good thing, and promoting from within to fill and allow for people to grow is actually the better way to do that. So I'm actually, I don't know if opposed to the note is the right word, but I philosophically think that you should promote from within. And does anyone else agree with that position? The note, and I'll ask the city manager, do you guys try to promote from within?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So I don't agree with the note that external recruitment and promotion is preferred to internal promotion. I think it's important to do external to make sure that we're getting the best candidates, but I think that it's actually preferable to promote internally to keep people developing in a staff
So
sense.
the last sentence does not prohibit internal promotions. What it simply says is that the city should test the marketplace first
Advertise.
by advertising. But it in no way is it prohibiting you to then go ahead and promote
Right.
the internal candidate. It's simply saying, there may be folks out there that really, truly would just come in and totally kill this job. And so, yes, I understand that there's an internal candidate who's been here 7 years and would like to come up through the ranks. And I will really, pay heed to that. But, if the position is one for a physicist and Albert Einstein applies, I really need to bring Albert Einstein in, because my overall goal as manager here is to move the city organization along. And I will take into consideration the internal candidates' feelings and that they may be disappointed, and I'll work with them. I'll tell their director to work with them to build their skills, to get more credentials, so that the next time this position comes open, they'll be even in a better position. but testing the marketplace is just always a good thing. You know, employers, especially smaller employers like the city is, you've only got so many internal candidates for some of these positions. And so if they come to feel an expectation that, oh, if I just stick around long enough, I'll get this position, you know, that's not necessarily a good thing for the organization. So again, if this is all you're to recommend, but philosophically, I'm just explaining why I drafted it the way I did.
Sorry, excuse me. Mr. Gomez, how is this currently handled within the city? So say, if you're trying to do an internal promotion,
We advertise all positions.
but you advertise it, but if employees that are allowed to apply for internal promotions, are they restricted if they've had counseling or disciplinary actions
No,
within the prior 12
I'm
months?
sorry, you said, are they allowed to apply?
Do you,
We allow all employees to apply.
what happens if they've received counseling or disciplinary?
That would be up to
actions?
that department to take a look at what's happened and make that a consideration of whether they are hired or not would be, but I'm not aware that that's happened recently, or the time that I've been here, but I've always allowed every employee and encourage employees to apply for positions, particularly those that may lead to a promotion.
Do you advertise within?
We advertise
the
all
city
positions.
To internally?
Well, we don't have an internal, I mean, everyone is aware when there is a vacancy, so they're advertised and
Okay.
everyone's encouraged to apply.
For me, I think that, and that's something we internally advertise, and that's, I mean, for me, philosophically, I understand what you're saying. Maybe putting in something that encourages internal,
Well, that's part of management. I'm always encouraging the department heads to
Yeah.
encourage your employees for promotions.
then I would think that note could include something to that effect, because it's, in the same vein, you want to encourage your managers to do external recruitment. You also want to encourage them to, which it sounds like you're already doing, but this text here is reflecting external, advertisement. I would think it should also be advertised internally.
Is there
Yeah, that's
is there a
fine.
human resources board where they would post like the policies or anything?
It's all
like that?
electronic.
It's all electronic? So there's no board where,
We have some, but I mean, most of the recruiting advertising notices that we put out, just like most other cities, is electronic.
is there any way that if a position becomes open like that and it's going to be advertised, that I don't know, that may not be the right way to say it, that whatever employees that you know fit that category would receive an email, or even if it was all employees saying, hey, look, this job's newly opened? Is that even a wise thing to do? I don't know.
Sure, you could do that. But everything is open and available just to anyone.
But-
And again, we're always encouraging
Yes.
employees to apply and to be promoted. You're asking, if I'm understanding you correctly, to be very, very specific that we will alert all employees of any position that's open to which an employee may apply and be promoted.
If it's being advertised externally, yes.
But it's advertised everywhere, that's my whole
Okay.
point.
Okay.
But we can do that. I mean, that's up to you, how you want this to be worded. I don't have any objections to that.
I don't want to add any work, just in the last time we went through this. I don't want to make anything that we won't fulfill, but if we can adjust some language that, I agree with what you're saying and thinking about, I agree with the note, but also want to highlight and encourage internal advertisement. So maybe if we could just add some language in there that reflects that, I think that would be adequate. Instead of, I don't want to make it so that they have to do something internally and then fail to do so. It is publicly advertised, so I do agree with that. I mean, it's a public position, so it's not like it's being hidden or not told about. But I would recommend that the note include something about advertising internally. Do you all agree
I
or
would agree.
disagree?
I would agree, but not limit him to
Yeah,
how they
not
advertise
limit, not
internally.
limit or require, but
Yeah.
encourage.
Encouraged.
How about this? Adding a sentence to 5C3A that says, all current employees are encouraged to apply for promotions, comma, and department directors and human resources staff shall endeavor to make promotional opportunities known to all current employees.
That
Yes,
sounds
please.
good.
That's perfect. That is exactly what I
All
was
right.
after. Thank
Yep.
you.
That works.
I got it.
Then it doesn't limit Mr. Gomez on how he has to do it. It makes
Yes, but it
easier.
encourages in the same sense that
Yeah.
we're encouraging external recruitment. Thank you.
Sure.
That was it for me, except for one, after 4, in the first paragraph, the period there should be inside of the parentheses, I believe, because it's a complete sentence. For demotions, it says signing the document does not mean, and I think the period at the end there should be inside. And that's it for me. Bless you.
I just have a typo in 4A. I think the second line should be or who is involuntarily demoted, because we were talking about an employee.
I got it.
Before we move on to the next page, do you guys want to take a quick 10-minute restroom/food break? Or is that okay with you, Clara? Mr. Eschenfelder?
It's at the will of y'all. So you're temporarily in recess for 10 minutes?
10 minutes.
4:48.
Okay. Okay, it's 4:59, we're returning. We might need Claire before we move forward, yep. Okay. I'm gonna go see if Claire's ready, guys, so we can get moving. Okay, are we on page 5-5? Are we on page 5-5, everyone?
Yes.
Any questions or concerns on the first two paragraphs?
I had one on 5.5. My question was not about a specific sentence or language, but how do we make sure that everybody is agreed upon when the period for these acting status is done? So how do we know there's a clear end? And should we consider adding language that makes it clear how we all know it's the end? My questions, my concern is that someone could, there could be a dispute about when that period ended and what pay they should have been gotten, during that period. And to me, the language doesn't clearly have an agreement where both sides would know that the status had ended.
So you're talking like, okay, so how long can they be in the temporary position, or the acting position, the acting position, correct?
Acting status or additional duties, really either. And I'll ask the city attorney if that is a valid concern. My reading of these does not seem to indicate that there's, it alludes to upon expiration of the acting status. And my question is, how do both the employer and employee know that they're in agreement on that and it doesn't end up as a dispute in payment?
Wouldn't that be in the offer letter?
Is there an offer letter? This is on temporary
There's no
acting
offer.
status?
There's no offer letter. When it's just acting. It's like, the division manager needed to go out for surgery. She'll be gone for 4 weeks, and so you're the acting division manager. And usually this kind of thing occurs over email or whatnot, but, I can certainly add a sentence to the end of A, that the acting status begins and ends on the dates established by the manager and agreed to by the employee.
Perfect. That would address my concern.
Okay?
Thank
Got
you.
it?
This last sentence of A is one thing I've been trying to get at. It's actually covered here. An employee may not be placed in acting status unless the employee meets the minimum qualifications of the higher level position. And that's something that's not explicitly written anywhere else in the job for hiring a person.
So you like that language for, skipping ahead to 7, where we were talking about transfers and laterals, something like that
Yes,
would be good? Okay.
yes.
Attorney Eschenfelder, did you hear that or follow that? There was a reference to the
Was that last sentence edited?
No, he likes the last sentence and wants similar language to be found in 7 on the next
On the next
page.
page.
And we can discuss it more there, but you might want to
Yeah.
underline that.
Okey doke.
Thank you.
Reclassifications, reorganizations. Mr. Eschenfelder, on 6, the opening paragraph of that, the bottom sentences I think are important. Every possible scenario can't be described in the general policy documents such as this manual. However, you're trying to keep employees informed. There's, to ensure compliance, so I go up, this is 2/3 of the way down. To ensure compliance with any applicable personnel policy regulations, requests for reclassifications must be submitted by department director in writing with supporting justification to Human Resources Department, which shall review and comment upon all reclassifications or reorganization requests, regardless of the number of employees involved. Does this specifically need to tie to market factors, evolving priorities, evolutions, and equipment materials? Because reorganization, as I understand it, and I might be wrong, but reorganization of the city is a requirement of the Board of Commissioners. Is that correct? Doesn't that fall under them?
The commissioners retain, the charter calls out certain departments and, but in terms of how those departments are organized, that is a managerial function.
That's manager,
So,
okay. All right.
you have like 3 divisions, maybe the city manager says there's just not enough work, or organizationally it makes sense to combine them into 2 divisions. Or there's become so much more work and there's this other specialty branch off So instead of 3 divisions, we're going to have 4 divisions. I mean, there could be any number of permutations of why you do a reorganization. And in terms of reclasses, that's more a function, less an organizational function, more a marketplace thing of you used to have somebody called COBOL programmers, and now nobody uses that language anymore, so you have to do a reclass of those people to what's now required.
Yeah. The, how is it handled if, and I can understand there will be market factors, things that change with the city, things that could require a reclassification. But how does this, say if an employee is reclassified that position, but it's higher than what their minimum qualifications are? What happens to that employee? Because I don't.
Well, sub A, if you're talking about pay, sub A deals with that. Employees reclassified to a higher pay grade shall be compensated based upon the city's assessment of the factors set forth in sub C below, and such compensation changes shall take effect on the first pay period after the effective date. And then in circumstances where they're downgraded, I mean, if you're talking about compensation, it's dealt with in A and B.
But what I don't get is it looks like, to me, that there's a possibility that an employee could be reclassified into a higher pay grade based upon what's going on with the city than what they're really qualified for, which how is that dealt with so that way the employee isn't just necessarily terminated because they can't meet the needs of that new position? Would they be placed in a different position somewhere else? Would there be a lateral? I don't see where this says anything about that. I think somewhere's in here it talks about that they want to make sure that people have jobs, you don't want to just needlessly let people go when you're doing a restructuring. But what protects the employee? What protects the employee? Because it could be that, God forbid, a city manager comes in and says, I want to change the structure, and it's just so they could get rid of employees. That's what stops that from happening.
Well, again, it seems like you're talking about a system where you're creating bumping rights.
No.
Where an employee who's being pushed out of a current job has a right to go into another job.
That's not it. That's not
Okay.
it. No bumping rights. It's what happens if a new city manager comes on board and they say market factors have changed and I'm going to change our departmental structure to this. And you have an employee that's been here for 20 years. Who knows? It could be 5 years. Doesn't really matter. But the pay grade that employee must go to, they're not going to qualify for. And that will eventually lead to the employee's termination because they are not going to qualify for the job. So what protections are there? I mean, if you have an economy slump and you have to do some restructuring, we all get some things are going to happen. People are going to be laid off. But if it's just a reorganization to get rid of employees, which is a possibility, how is that prevented with this reclassification reorganizations?
Would you want them to, what's the reasonable accommodations type approach are you
Yeah.
suggesting?
Are there reasonable? Yes, are
Yeah,
there,
so
and I
geez.
don't know.
If that's a fair summation, because it does address in B, so I think either they go to a new hire classification or they get downgraded to a lower. And you're saying, what if they don't fit in any of those classifications?
When
And in
there's-
essence, can no longer perform the essential function of the job? Do we have a duty as the city to provide some kind of assistance to try to, parallel them somewhere?
Or does that become a layoff? What is the case
And that
there?
would be to the attorney. Is there any reason, can we reasonably consider as we make accommodations for injury, to put them somewhere else? Or is it just that, you don't fit what we're doing anymore, so that's it?
So again, you have to read the policy holistically. Sorry to keep saying that. And you're correct that if they don't fit the minimum qualifications, then they can't be reclassified into the higher job if that's what's occurring. And so then it does become effectively a layoff, and that's handled under Section 9. And that there's a whole procedure for how employees are being laid off, how they're selected for layoff, and their reinstatement. If you're talking about an injury or an illness, then you look over at Section 9F, which is my proposal for an alternative employment program. And an alternative employment program, if the employee becomes unable to perform because of a disability, then we're going to try to work with that employee. HR is going to affirmatively try to find positions where that employee can be qualified to hold that job so that the employee can go into that job. But at the end of the day, if there is nothing for that employee to go into, they would lose their job. I mean, it's an unfortunate reality, but if they are the proverbial COBOL programmer and they have found, discovered that they're an expert in a dying field, then, and there's no place else in the city that they can go to, then they have to be separated.
Is it, so I think maybe what we're after, and I did read to 9, so I do know what you're talking about. Is it, would it be appropriate then to, in 6, provide reference to, would that, Mr. Cantrell, do what you're
I
intending
don't think you need to
to-
reference it in that case because it actually covers it in 9. Yeah,
So you don't think a reference is necessary?
I don't think so,
Okay.
no. The only thing I'm concerned about there is there's a new city manager that comes in. They immediately say, we're going to restructure, and then it makes it possible for them to terminate employees that they otherwise wouldn't want to keep. And we addressed this in that similar situations in the combined meeting. So it's just, and
I certainly do hear your concern, and it wouldn't be the first time that happened. I mean, you can't guarantee against a bad manager with ill motives who invokes the reclass position in order to get rid of someone. Would it give you any comfort to add a sub D under 6 to say that any reclassification or reorganization shall be presented to the Civil Service Commission so that you guys can question? I mean, at the end of the day, you wouldn't be overruling the manager, but at least you could hold the manager to account to hear what he or she is saying that their justification is.
I would be fine with that, because then we would have the opportunity to say yes or no. Hopefully it's a yes if that's what's going on. And if it's a no, and the city manager doesn't agree with us, we could always say, hey, we would like to request a meeting with the Board of Commissioners. Because that would provide us an opportunity to make sure that there's a protection, that just to prevent people from needlessly being eliminated. And I don't think where we're at right now within the city, I don't think that's going to happen.
That seems like a simple safeguard.
Yeah, if you could do that for the D, just as a safeguard.
All right, so then the sentence would read, any reclassification or reorganization shall be presented to the Civil Service Commission prior to implementation.
Doesn't happen that often anyway, right?
That
It's not
shouldn't
really
happen
a-
often at all. I think the one major thing that could happen is if 2008 happens again. I mean, that's a definitive, it's clear you got to do something when that happens, So we're okay with moving on to 7 on page 5-6? Are you guys okay with that? As I read this, I don't think, because this says an employee may not be placed in an acting status unless the employee meets the minimum qualifications of the higher level position. I would like for this one to read, if they're doing a transfer, they need to meet the minimum requirements of the classification. That it's not going to be higher pay. There's no pay adjustment when you're doing a lateral transfer. But
The sentence that I added was, an employee may not be transferred to a different position unless that employee meets the minimum qualifications of that position.
that is good for me. Does that go with you guys? That is on 7.
Yeah, it's a new last sentence of 7.
Okay.
Okay. Are you guys okay to move on to 5-7? So starting with permanent additional duties. This, permanent additional duties, adjusting a suitable wage rate increase would be the same thing where I'm saying, okay, you have to meet minimum job requirements, therefore you receive a certain amount of pay. What is that next step if you add additional duties on, and how is it equitable for everyone? And there's no easy answer to this right now. I agree that an employee, if there's extra duties, and it really should be a different wage, that the employee their salary should be increased. But how do we make it equitable? You shouldn't, a manager or director or whoever shouldn't be able to say, Joe, you're really good, you're gonna get a 5% raise, but Jane, you're okay, you're gonna get a 2% pay raise. And I know I've seen that. So, and I don't want that happening personally.
I mean, for me, you can define what constitutes, what justifies, a pay increase.
Which we need to see the classifications to
But
do
even
that.
regardless, the reclassification is just going to tell us the salary ranges, right?
It'll tell us salary ranges. It also tell us if what they're currently doing in their positions is equitable with other positions and those pay scales. So it tells us if they're properly classified, as well as sets a range for what the business sector will hold for those jobs currently. So it accomplishes two different things. Do you need to shift some of the classification? Do you need to shift some of the pay scales?
That's still not going to address how you adjust within the classification, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
But this says permanent additional duties. You're saying we're going to give you a pay raise because you got permanent additional duties. What's that pay raise? What are the duties? How does it rate? I mean, and I know that we're not going to, just like in other things, we're not going to address every single situation. It's just not going to happen. But we can come up with a general rule that if you know you're adding 20% more workload onto an employee, they need to get a 2% pay raise. Whatever the case is. I mean, there's things like that we can state, but I don't know what they should be right now. Does that make sense to anyone else? When I read these, to me, what goes off in my mind is how a person may like someone else and wants to give them a pay raise, even because they're doing more work, but they may not have that same admiration or affection for another person, and they don't get an equitable raise for doing the same work.
So and I'm not sure if this is in here, but typically don't you do some kind of justification for that, and then wouldn't,
But it's not here.
directors may,
This just says the employee's director shall work with human resources staff to determine suitable wage rate increase. There's nothing standardizing what's suitable.
well, why don't we, Attorney Eschenfelder, do you have any language or know of language that would implement a more standard approach to assessing different pay scales or pay, specific salaries?
Well, I think that your pay and classification study is going to give you that data writ large. I think just philosophically, as a labor and employment defense attorney, I counsel against over standardization
Okay.
of all things about compensation. I think you've got when you do your pay and class plan, that sets up every job description. It sets up minimums and maximums, pay range within those job descriptions, because that's what the market bears at that time. Your policy allows a manager to make decisions that, give extraordinary raises if there's a reclass or whatnot. We've just talked about those rules. So you have that flexibility, but to try to create a written rule that purportedly gives equity to all employees across the organization over time is so incredibly difficult. And then the moment the ink dries, you're going to find things that it messes up. You're not going to follow it uniformly. And so now you've created claims for yourself. And ultimately, you may not need it. Like we're talking about employee retention, right? And yet the manager has told you all on numerous occasions, we're not having a lot of
Yeah.
turnover. And we don't have those complex systems. So certainly when the paying class comes, if Chair Cantrell or any of the other of you want to draft language that you want to talk about, we could talk about it, but I counsel against that level of specificity, particularly in a personnel policy.
I think it'd be really difficult
you.
myself. I think you could allude to, I mean, that's what I asked the city manager, do you use some kind of standard form for promotions and annual review? And I mean, to me, that should suffice if you're documenting your rationale for doing these different things. To set up a system, I personally could not imagine coming up with a system that addresses all of that.
I think you can address all
I
of
don't think
them.
you can. So
Yeah.
do you use some kind of standard approach?
No, of course
Oh.
not. It's not practical.
No, well, do you use
Nor
like
efficient.
standard, like questions? Do you do annual performance reviews?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I mean by standard.
Yeah, but
Do you-
that's different than a promotion
Well,
But this isn't a promotion or a standard review. This is.
or additional duties. You wouldn't give additional duties without giving compensation, but that's part of your budget review of your positions. If you're doing this, again, it really should be, things may happen throughout the year, but it really needs to occur when you're looking at your budget if that's typically what you would want to do, but understand that it may not always happen that way.
This is permanent additional duties, so it wouldn't be because everybody's going to get additional duties throughout the year. Something's going to happen, you got a little extra you got to do, but shouldn't be outside of the realm of what you're expected for the scope of your job. This one says permanent additional duties.
I've actually never even seen anything like this, but
Yeah,
it's in here, so
yeah.
I would just add that it should be documented and signed by both ends. I feel like that's I mean, if you both agree to it, then so be it.
And so be it.
Would that suffice, for permanent additional duties?
Is that okay, Mr. Ashenfelder?
Well, I'm not exactly sure what Commissioner Ponte is referring to with respect to documented and agreed to.
State what the additional duties are to include, indicate on a letter or letterhead what the associated salary increase would be, and have that agreed upon just as in any other contract, like as if it were, the initial application.
Yeah, no, there's no way I would counsel that. So how it goes down is it's akin to a reclassification or just any other instruction that management may give. I'm putting these new job obligations on you. And I can see by your credentials, whatever that is, licensure, years of experience, that you're minimally qualified still to perform this job, even with the new duties. And so legally speaking, contractual, that employee is agreeing to those new duties by continuing to come to work the next day. I mean, that is in an at-will employment setting, your coming to work is your acceptance of your job duties at the rate of pay that you've been offered. And so I wouldn't want to create a system where every time the manager changes someone's job duties, that has to be put in writing and presented to that employee so that the employee has to agree to it. Because what if they don't?
This
Does that
is
mean
for
fire
a
them?
wage rate increase. Well, I mean, to me, this seems more substantial than just simply changing duties. This is with respect to increasing wages.
So that would be updating the job description.
Well, right, but whenever so let's say the department head calls the employee and says, employee, just because of whatever, we used to use a contractor for this. Now I feel we're going to be able to use you for this. And so I have decided that you're going to get an additional $3 an hour. So several things could happen. One, the employee can say, I do not wish to do those duties at all. And at that point, they pretty much have to quit because the boss is saying, you've got to do these duties. They're now part of your job. Two, they could say, okay, that's cool. $3 an hour. Thanks much. Now all we're good. Or they could say, number three, well, I'll do the duties, but $3 an hour isn't all that much. How about $4 an hour? And if the director says, all right, $4 an hour, I'll go talk to the manager, it'll be $4 an hour. All of those scenarios could occur.
Shouldn't you put a letter in the file, though, that states that? Anytime you're changing something significant, and shouldn't you document that?
Well, I suspect, I'm familiar with what's called a pay action form, but I think the city has everything automated on a computer. And so there would be a date at which the pay rate changes, and there would be a reason code, I assume, that says reason for pay rate change, additional duties assigned. And the manager can speak to whether that's a thing that their city's computer program currently does or not.
Yes, that's what it does.
All right, so that would be your documentation, and the employee's contractual acceptance would be that the employee keeps working.
I'm fine to move on from this. Yeah, that's fine.
I think when we get the classification study back, if this and that other item, if it's something we need to revisit, we can bring back up. It's complex. This is not going to be a simple solution, and it's trying to find out what the right wording is that we're looking for. It's I understand the reason for doing it. I think it's a good thing to do, but I also feel that because there's a wage increase, why?
Yeah,
And-
anytime you're
yeah.
you're doing something that could later come into question, why wouldn't you add that to a personnel file? If somebody has a dispute and they end up in a lawsuit for whatever, that same employee you gave a raise to, and they said, I never agreed to those additional duties, wouldn't you want it on a paper that says, you agreed to do these additional duties for this additional salary? To me, anytime you make a substantive change to duties, salary, or other, you should be documenting the rationale to remove any question related to equity, similar to the path that you were traveling down, that the idea is everything you do should have justification when it comes to adjustments to salary. So to me, that's where I'm coming from on that.
The other side of it, I look at it, if there are significant additional duties, is there something that needs to be looked at for the classification? I don't want to stop an employee from getting paid. They deserve to get paid. We have great employees. But are we not looking at something we need to look at if they've got significant additional duties? Yeah.
Okay. we can
One thing
revisit.
that I do want to mention, we do a payroll action form when we raise any employees' rates, so we can certainly put in the comments, or we have to put something in the comments, so we can put what it is that they got the raise for.
Yeah, it almost seems as though you're doing this, and then I'm suggesting adding language that, for that to be in their file. In essence, I mean, you could consider what they're doing already to have it in their file, but if you
go back and look at the list of things that is required to be in a personnel file, it's already there. All documents related to wage changes is one of the categories.
Okay,
All right.
then that is covered.
I think we're agreeing just to
Yep. Go ahead.
accept it as it is now and revisit maybe at a potential date.
With what he
later.
just said, it sounds like it is covered.
It's covered, yeah.
So any wage changes, it states in the list, and I don't have it committed to memory, so that addresses the question then.
We covered that last time, I think, that last.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's when you were talking about if somebody got a big increase, got extra duties, and they didn't have the education and training, they would get the
Yeah,
training.
it's on page 2.8.
I haven't. I agree. I think it is covered then. So he addressed my question. Thank you.
Are we ready to move on to page 6-1? Hit another topic? You have 27 minutes. Are we good? Okay. All right. This is holidays, A, administration. There, on item number 8, Mr. Gomez, why, it says when a holiday falls on a Saturday, it's observed on the preceding Friday. When a holiday falls on a Sunday, it's observed on the following Monday, except as may be determined otherwise by the city manager. Does that mean that you can move it to the following Friday, or what does that represent?
It's maybe the days are made consecutive, such as what we're doing this year. Our holidays this year, the 24th of December fall on a Sunday, December 25th falls on a Monday. The days that we are observing as holidays are Monday, the 25th, and Tuesday, the 26th.
I understand that makes total sense. All right. So it doesn't mean you can get rid of it. It just means you can shift it appropriately, correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right. I have nothing else on that page. Does anybody?
I have nothing on 6-1 or 6-2. If we're, it looks like you're on 6-2.
Days.
Okay, something, when I look at E, just a concern of mine. I've actually taken person holidays in the past, set it up, scheduled it in advance, bought airplane tickets to get up to the week that the holiday was supposed to be on, and then my employers told me, you can't take your personal holiday. And my options were not good. I lost the money.
We
that-
get 2 personal holidays.
Yeah, but what if a person's buying airfare or anything like that? This says that and department director has the sole discretion to allow personal holiday to be used on a particular day or to rescind a prior approval where the needs of the city so require. And I understand the needs of the city, especially if there's emergency, things of that sort, but air travel will shut down for that, and they will guarantee that you get another flight at another time. But if you're like me and you try to plan as much as you can, I literally will have bought my airplane ticket 6 months in advance. And if I've set that date and I've gotten approval, I'm not flexible with it. And
Right.
that's, so the only thing that concerns me there is that, or rescind a prior approval where the needs of the city so require. That, is there any way you can make that more specific?
Are we in E?
Say it again. I'm on E, on page 6-2, so it's 13E. Because if a person's had approval for a very long period of time, and they've gone ahead and they've made plans, and then at the last moment, if it's not some type of an emergency for the community, to sit there and say our needs have changed, you can't do it, that's not fair to the employee. Is there a window that you can sit there and say, unless it's for,
Hurricane?
yeah, some type of public emergency or weather-related emergency? If it's those needs, I absolutely agree that the city should, they should say, no, you can't, you gotta be here. But for you to go up to the last week and then say, no, we need you here, which I've had happen to me in the past, that's not cool. So,
Due to an emergent situation.
if it's something like due to some type of emergent situation, is there any way to change that, Mr. Ashenfelder, to make it more specific?
Well, there is. So let me just offer you my thought on it. I hear what you're saying, and if a boss does that to you for some trivial, allegedly need of the city, shame on that boss. But if you limit it to an emergency situation or a natural disaster or whatnot, that especially with a small organization, there could be instances, and I've seen them over my career, where the organization has, let's say, a department head who is the budget director, and that person quits or is fired in advance of getting the budget done in the next 4 days. And the only other person left is the budget coordinator who worked for that director. And now the manager is left with 4 days left to get the statutory budget adoption process done. And he has to turn to that budget coordinator, who really is the only person that could help bring it across the finish line. And so if that person says, but I have a personal holiday, and under this rule, since it's not a hurricane, I'm out of here. It's you just have to have more flexibility than that, and you have to rely on, if you have a good manager who understands that he or she is messing this person's vacation up or whatnot, that manager is going to make it right for that poor employee that lost that opportunity in every possible lawful way that manager can. But if you limit it to only hurricane type related disasters, you're taking the ability of that manager away the ability of that manager to put a resource into place to get a job done that needs to be done for the organization's best interest. So, I mean, I certainly hear the experience you had, Commissioner Cantrell. I don't, that should never happen, where a whimsical reason is what causes you to get canceled. But it's the same thing with canceling vacation leave. Management can say, look, I know I approved vacation, but now, we lost 2 guys here in the past 2 weeks, and I've got to get this park ready for the league play that's about to occur. And so I have to, call you back from vacation. I mean, I don't know. That's the justification for it. But certainly it's up to the will of you guys if you want to make it a more stringent requirement of when the manager can cancel the personal holiday.
I agree with you where you're saying that it could be something like that, where you got a budgetary issue, and statutorily, you do have to do certain things. So I can understand where with the city, you would have to, that would be a necessity. I don't know if there's a language that would cover that.
Give
but
it back at a day and a half. If they cancel on you. I mean, you really shouldn't, but
You really
if
should.
it was approved,
Yeah.
give it back at a day and a half or something.
Yeah.
Well, it does say.
How about
this
this? Say, or to rescind a prior approval where the urgent needs of the city so require, comma, and no reasonable alternative is present.
That would make sense to me. What were you going to say, Dr. McLaughlin?
Oh, I was just going to say, it currently the department director has sole discretion, and that maybe we might put in, like, the city manager could review, or like some other process. But I like the language you just proposed to make it a little stronger, that it's not on a whim, but a real urgent need.
I like to change that with the urgent need too. Does anyone have concerns with that?
Is that in number 3?
That is 13E. What were you saying? Oh, we're going to 6.3. Is that what you said? Okay, I'm sorry.
Just reflecting on conversation had, I almost am thinking that it is good to refer to other sections, like the conversation we had about termination and your concern, although it is included in this policy somewhere. The reality is, when you look at something, when you're looking for guidance from a document, you go to the relevant section. You do not remember the whole policy in whole. So I think it is appropriate throughout the document to make references to the appropriate sections, because it's intended to help the people utilizing it, not just to cover it. So I would encourage us to make references where appropriate throughout. There was one example you just had, and one of the questions I had, even us who read it a week ago, I can't remember where half the stuff is. So food for thought on that as we go through. And maybe there's a legal implication there. I know you would want it to be verbatim, but referring to other sections, I would think wouldn't be harmful. So that's not,
I agree.
we can continue on.
I actually agree with you. I do.
Yeah.
Do you guys agree?
Because you go to one section, you're reading one part, you don't have the rest committed to memory.
I can tell
So.
you at least 3 times here where I've
Yeah.
been like in the same section, I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, I
where
should have read
else
the
is
whole
it?
thing
Yes,
instead of
but
this
you
one
can't remember
sentence.
it. It's, and we've been going through this for years now.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you.
Mr. Ashenfelder, at one point, we had agreed that these yellow spots, you would work with Human Resources to make sure that these were updated based on what the city is currently doing. Is that correct?
Yes, and Megan sent me yesterday the relevant information, so I'll go ahead and plug those in. But basically, the current policy for annual leave is that it's 0 through 4 years. You get 10 days or 6.66 hours per month. For 5 years through 9 years, you get 15 days or 10 hours per month for a minimum of 120. And for 10 years through 19 years, you get 20 days or 13.33 hours per month or 160 hours. For 20 or more years, you get 20 days plus 1 day per year of service over 20 years with a maximum of 25 days annual leave per year.
That's pretty good.
Very
That's
appropriate.
very generous.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's comparable to
Yeah,
20 days, 4 weeks.
yeah. 20 years, 4 weeks, yeah.
That's pretty,
Yeah, so I'll plug it all in, and there's some wording differences of the current policy. So when you see the final, it'll just be what the city does now.
So number 2, employees may begin a new calendar year with XXX, a maximum number of XXX vacation leave hours. Is that already decided by the city, or is that something that we're supposed to decide?
So that's already in the current policy. It says on page 14 of the current personnel policy, it says maximum accrual for an employee is twice the annual accrual amount.
Is that what we're going to change this to?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm going to default it to the current city policy, and then if y'all want to change it from that, you certainly can. But the current city policy is pretty darn generous in my estimation.
I know that,
it sounds reasonable to me. I mean, our company is pretty staunch, they're not, 4 to 5 weeks is reasonable.
I know
That's not excessive for 25 years, in my opinion.
I have 8 years and I have 10 weeks worth of vacations.
Yeah,
So it's,
that's 5 weeks for 25 years. I don't think, the one question I had, which is next, is sick leave never going away and being paid out. That was the one part I thought was a little generous.
So the current city policy is all full-time employees get 96 hours per year, 8 hours per month. Part-time employees are not eligible to receive sick leave. And sick leave may be accrued with no maximum. Employees shall be allowed to cash out up to 24 hours of their earned sick leave for having perfect attendance without sick leave used during the fiscal year, and the final payout on separation will be 25% of accrued sick leave.
I'd like to come back to that.
Yeah, sorry, we
I'd
don't
like
have to
come
jump
back
ahead
to
to that. So we can stick to vacation,
So
but that helps.
in the next iteration of this, when we come back, can we see what item 2 looks like? Can we get that? I understand where those asterisks are on 2, you're gonna put twice the annual current amount or some wording like that, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Can we get those the next time we come back so we can see what they look like in the document?
When's our next meeting?
Oh, January 6th. I think it's.
Oh, yeah, yeah. No,
I think it's
yeah, no
January
problem.
6th, is that right?
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I'll do, just to catch us up, is I'll go through and do all of my edits up through where we leave off tonight. And that way you can see where we've been since, and we can start from that draft. But that way you could, go back and revisit what the current, of all of this that I saw of the current city policy, I think if it's a business decision, of course, but if I were to revisit something, I would revisit the sick leave. First of all, you're allowing it to be accumulated with no limits, and you're encouraging a payout for people who have perfect attendance. And so when you talk about what is the purpose of sick leave, it's for people to be out of work because they're sick and be paid for it. And so the moment you start incentivizing employees to sit on their sick leave because of the annual payouts and the ultimate payout, what you then encourage is employees coming to work sick and, or looking for ways to get a doctor to say, well, I could work some things, but not all things. And so can you give me light duty, because they don't want to take sick leave. So, I mean, I think if you're going to give sick leave, even if you're going to have it uncapped, it should be used to be sick, and you really shouldn't be paying it out. It's there for you. And if you leave without using it, you leave without using it.
I entirely agree, because it's like that in this draft. I was surprised by paying out sick leave.
Can I address number 7 on what is this? Vacation leave?
Okay, we'll
Number
stay on
7?
vacation leave, yes, and so are we on 7-2?
7.2. Is it okay if I address number 7?
Now, on the holiday, listing of holidays on 6B, New Year's Eve is missing. We also get New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve? Oh, so you get New Year's Day and New Year's Eve?
Yeah. and we
Yeah.
get
Just
New-
be mindful that this proposal is to add 2 additional holidays. By no means am I objecting to adding holidays. I'm sure all employees would be ecstatic, but there are already 11 paid holidays. You're adding 2 more to make it 13 paid
And I'm not-
holidays, plus the 2 personal holidays, making it 15 holidays.
So those
Yeah,
don't,
and I'm not, this isn't a proposal to change anything. This is just my plugins. I've now got your list of
Right,
holidays.
but just so everyone is clear, in the list before you, there are 12 holidays that are listed. We currently do not receive Juneteenth Day is currently not a holiday. I'm sorry, and President's Day is currently not a holiday as well.
Correct. We get New Year's Eve.
However, New Year's Eve day is a holiday,
do you get 2 personal holidays?
plus 2 personal holidays.
Do you currently get 2 personal?
Yes,
Okay.
and as this is listed, they must be used within the same calendar year.
I think fire gets more.
Again, I
Yeah,
have
so
no
for-
objection going from 11 paid holidays to 13 paid holidays. However, just something for you to consider.
What do you guys think? Oh, sorry. What do you guys think?
So the current list of the city is New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, Martin Luther King, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving Day, Day after Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and the 2 personal holidays.
What about Easter? No Easter?
Easter's a
No.
Sunday.
It's religious.
Oh,
In some cities, it's called a spring holiday.
okay.
It's always a Sunday. The, I'm kind of torn because these are holidays I don't even get paid for.
I don't either.
St.
I
Clara
get,
gets a
I
birthday.
get 2 out of the 3.
Typically, cities do not provide Christmas Eve as a holiday, so December 24th, nor December 31st, New Year's Eve. However, those 2 days are supplanted, well, in lieu of those 2 days, most cities had President's Day as a holiday. In the last couple of years, Juneteenth Day has been added as that became a federal holiday. But not all cities are currently providing Juneteenth Day as a holiday off. In my nearly 30 years across 4 cities and looking at holidays, between 10 to 12 tends to be the norm of the total number of holidays, such as the ones Mr. Eschenfelder just read, plus typically anywhere from 2 to 3 personal holidays, which again typically must be taken during the calendar year.
I'd like to just
So there's really only one named holiday in the list in my draft that the city doesn't do, and that's President's Day.
And Juneteenth.
Well, and Juneteenth did become a federal holiday 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Again,
That's not in my list.
Right.
Yes, it-
Well, it is a
it's
federal
This here.
holiday.
Number 5.
It's number 5 on
Or
ours.
it was, it used to be. Maybe not on your version, but it is on ours.
It's on the paper document, on the
It's on,
electronic
the agenda
document.
item that we're looking at.
It's on the electronic document in red. Yeah.
All right, well, my thing doesn't have that listed. I've got New Year, in the one draft that I'm working off of, it's New Year's Day, Martin Luther King, President's Day, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, Friday after Thanksgiving, Christmas Day, and day before or after Christmas, depending on what the manager says.
And we
And
get,
then
I
the
also
personal
don't have
we
holidays.
get New
Veterans Day.
Year's Eve.
And New Year's Eve, yeah.
I don't get Veterans Day.
And I think
or
the fire
New Year's
department
Eve
gets their
Day.
birthday.
I'm coming to work for the city.
They got different.
Yes. I want to
Which
come
is
work for
good.
the city.
Yeah.
I get, you guys are talking about
three
the holiday. You know how many holidays I get a year? 2. I get paid for 2 holidays a year. That's it.
What should we do about this? Just,
I would
Yeah,
just,
Rob,
my
make that-
suggestion, when you do
Leave.
get to the sick leave incentive needs to go away.
okay, that's what we were all
And
saying.
so not every employee obviously receives that sick leave incentive, where if you did not take a sick day, you are paid for 2 days. That, not in support of that. I will tell you, the majority of our employees who do utilize that
It sounds
at the
bad.
top of the organization, not myself, I take sick days. I get sick and I take a sick day. I don't come into work all the time.
I haven't been sick all year.
So, right, but I think but again, if you're a department head or myself, we do not record a sick day unless we are out the entire day. If I come in for all the department heads, we come in 5, 10, 15 minutes, an hour, and then you go home sick, you do not have to record the hours as sick time. That's being exempt. So I'm never been a fan of the sick leave for the reason the incentive, as Mr. Eschenfelder stated. It incentivizes employees to not take a sick day so that you can get paid out. Or you record a sick day as a vacation day because you are receiving, as you go on through the years of service, you receive more vacation days. So just something to consider. One final item. I am a big advocate of mandating vacation. Thou shalt take vacation. That would be good to put in a policy. It is a good internal control. Every employee needs to get away from the office. It's a very good internal control. It helps combat fraud.
Can we go back to page 7-2?
Yeah.
and tackle number 7.
Yeah, and then get back to, that's good information and discussion, though.
Number 7, I think, needs to be removed.
Number 7 has to be removed. Do we
What you're
need
doing
to
is
notify?
vacation should be paid as hours that you normally get paid. It should not be transferred to sick time.
Okay, so
which
that-
can be thrown out.
Well, let's
But that's
add-
if we're saying that sick time could be paid out. I don't think sick time should be paid out. I think it should be there for an employee to use if they need it, but they shouldn't get paid it when they leave.
I think we're all in agreement. Anybody is everybody in agreement that sick leave should not be paid out?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes? Yes, across the
It
board?
is typically paid out when someone retires at a percentage, such
Okay.
as 25%.
Can we put that in there for retirement?
For
then?
when someone
If they
retires.
retire, they could be paid their sick
Right.
leave. But is that fair to do that, Mr. Eschenfelder? Where we say if
Well, I mean, it is. It just maintains a separate variation of the same disincentive to take sick leave.
I don't think
because
it should be
I'm
that
sitting
at all.
on it as a piggy bank, you know?
It's sick leave.
I think if you're going to let people accumulate leave that they get to paid out, do that on
Well,
vacation.
You
That's
set a
sick.
maximum for what can be accrued also.
getting to the point what you said where you take your sick leave, you take your vacation, it should be mandatory within the 2-year period where you max out on your vacation
I mean, it should be mandatory every year.
every
For
year.
every employee to take vacation.
in the
Not, if you're accruing 20 days, that might be difficult, but as a minimum, every employee should take at least 2 weeks of vacation. Not necessarily consecutive, but at least 10 days of vacation every year.
Then we need to somewhere the account for that. Number 7, can we strike this from the document?
At
I
the
have
end
a
of the
quick
last,
question for the manager. Is there ever a situation where one employee can donate sick time to another
Yes.
employee?
Yeah, we do, and we allow up to 24 hours, 3 days a year. And as a matter of fact, we just had an employee that was pretty low on their sick leave, so kind of a reminder went out to everyone, and so
Good.
a lot of them, yes, we do encourage that, and that's every year.
When we finish this document, we'll have to go through and ask that to be added in. It's not in this current document.
Yeah, I worked with an HR person one time. She took her sick day every month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So number 7 on page 7-2.
At the end of the last pay period in the calendar year, the vacation leave account is audited. Vacation leave in excess of 400 hours is transferred to the employee's sick leave account on an hour-for-hour basis. And Commissioner Cantrell is recommending that that be removed. Can we ask first what the policy is?
I've already struck it.
Okay, is that,
I don't know why the city
Okay.
did that.
so we're all in
That's
agreement?
really
Can we
odd.
remove that?
Okay, it's been
Yeah,
removed.
it's out.
This-
I've already removed it.
This also doesn't encourage an employee to take vacation.
Okay, so that has been removed. I wanted to just say quick here. If it's not objectionable to anybody, I strongly believe there should be a 0 before all decimal places. So that shows up a few times, but specifically in the note before vacation leave. And then just a few things on number 3 for vacation leave. I would just make it, the first sentence, vacation leave for non-exempt employees should generally be scheduled no less than 3 workdays in advance regardless of, it seemed like a long run-on sentence with stuff in parentheses, so I would just request that it be reviewed. And then under number 5,
Could you slow down? You're talking so fast.
sorry,
Where were you at?
reread number 3 on A for vacation leave.
Page 7-2.
7-2, vacation leave for non-exempt employees.
Okay, so just revise that to Mr.
Yes, sir.
Chair?
Just rewrite it.
Please, yes, I think it could be more clear.
Okay, I got it.
Number 5, the list, it goes down A, B, C, D. Employees shall forfeit all vacation payouts if the employee terminates because the employee, A, B, C, D, and then E and F don't really fit in the list. I almost think they need to be bumped out to their own number. If you can just review that and see if you agree, Attorney Eschenfelder, I don't know that everybody needs to take the time to review. If you would just review and see if you agree.
So, no, I understand your point. F will become E, and then E will become new number 6.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Okay,
And 7 disappears. Yeah.
yeah, the current 6 becomes 7 and 7 disappears.
Thank you.
And then that same thing occurs in sick leave, so I'll make the same change in sick leave.
Can, number 9, which is on page 7-3, is that okay to address that?
Yep.
Mr. Gomez made a good point that there should be mandatory vacation every year if the employee should use it. How do we put something in there that if they have 2 weeks of vacation or up to 2 weeks of vacation, it must be used during the calendar year? Is there a way to document that?
I think you would incentivize them to use it if you made it use or lose.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one way.
And can you clarify, you said it helps prevent fraud?
Oh, it does.
In
You
what
could cover
sense?
up lapping, kiting especially in a financial area, but there are ways that employees who never took vacation committed a variety of fraud, not turning in items,
Okay.
not knowing. It's just another way to perpetuate, usually in a financial type of scheme.
Okay.
No, I haven't taken vacation, but I'm here to midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. If I go to the doctor for an hour and a half, trust me, I work 15 hours that day just to make up that hour and a half.
Okay.
So,
So, Mr. Eschenfelder, is it possible to add in a line item that states that every employee must use up to 10 days? I mean, because they may only have 1 or 2 during a year, depending upon how their employment track is, but they have to use up to 10 days of vacation within the first 12 months, within the... You have carryover because you have what? I can't remember what it was, but new employees get 2 or 3 weeks. What is it?
10 days,
So they have to use them for the first 3 years, is that right?
correct,
4 years. Going to the 5th year, they get an extra week. That can carry,
correct.
and they can build it,
Yes.
all right?
So you lose 2 weeks every year if you don't use them.
I mean, the bottom line in the end, you do also want to reduce what your payouts may be over time. I mean, that's been a big issue, particularly for your department heads and higher. But I worked in one city for 19 years. When I left, I had 84 hours of vacation. I had 10 days after 19 years. And for 10 of those years, I accrued 20 vacation days a year. You give vacation, it should be taken. That's what it's for. Otherwise, don't give it out. It's not designed for a payout when somebody leaves an organization.
So how do you do the unused vacation time? So if you have employees who've been here for 20 years, they get 4 weeks worth of vacation. You're going to require that they use 2 weeks or they use it.
Just, you
But if they go over that 2 weeks of accrued per year, can number 9 be written to where that they have to be paid whatever hours exceed that? Plus add in?
Can you just say, we're not going to pay you more than 2 weeks or 3 weeks out? That's it at the end?
Yeah,
Well,
currently, the policy is there's a maximum accrual, which is twice the annual accrual amount. So if you've been here, say, 21 years, that is twice 168 hours.
336.
I do better with 4 as 8. So if you get 4 weeks, you can accrue up to 8.
And then it says employees, so it says on or about November 1st, notices will be sent to employees who are projected to have excess annual leave as of December 31. Employees may cash out any excess accrued hours with the city manager's approval over the allowable amounts, or it will be forfeited as of January 1st. So I would imagine under this wording that the manager receives a flood of such requests every year. I don't know. And then it says, upon separation from employment, employees will be paid for all accumulated annual leave prorated to the date of separation. I don't even really know what that means, but at the employee's current hourly rate.
Are you reading the current policy?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, the current one.
I don't see that.
It's on page
So
14 of the
he's
current
reading the
policy.
current Madeira
Oh,
policy.
current, I'm sorry, current. Okay, I
Yeah,
got
yeah,
it, sorry,
current.
I'm throwing myself off. Okay. How do we?
So, I mean, if you want to incentivize people taking it, then, you know, you should take away that you're going to pay it all out when they leave. And you should take away the opportunity for the manager on an annual basis to
Pay out.
let them pay it out.
Is
Yeah,
that
I'm
just say-
not a big fan of the payout either. I think you have a max. Once you hit the max, you do not accrue anymore above that maximum cap, which again means that employees need to be taking their vacation.
Yeah.
Just to give you an personal, I received 26 vacation days last year. I took 24. I received 21 this year. I currently have a balance of 40 hours. I have
And you
5
do
vacation
take a
days.
lot.
I use my vacation, and if the person at the top of the organization, I think every employee needs to be taking vacation, but I've been saying this for 29 years at all 4 cities that I've worked in.
Yeah.
So do we go back and redress?
Well, let's see, fundamentally, does everyone agree? I mean, I do. You should take the vacation.
Yeah, I agree, should
Okay.
take the vacation.
You
Now, I know some people that work at home, you know, you're not really clocking them, you know they're not really working 8 hours at
Yeah.
home, but they get extra time by working at home, and plus their vacation.
They should be working, and we are reviewing that they are working 8 hours.
But
And we do have a way to check that, so technology allows you to check
Well, that's
that.
good. That's
So, and again, we don't have any employees that solely work from home.
Yeah,
Might be 1
COVID,
day or
I
2
was
days a
thinking
week.
Yeah, I was thinking COVID, remember a lot of people work at home, COVID.
Can we get rid of number 9 then? Unused vacation hours will not be paid out?
Well, so fundamentally, we all agree, don't pay out vacation.
Except for if you, up to that 2 weeks, if you're allowed your, whatever your year's maximum is, that, if they resign, retire, they should be able to
Yes,
get
that's
paid
true.
that out.
Over, and I think ours is like past 5 years, you're eligible for that. Like, you have to be there at least 5 years, and then you can be paid out at the end. But we shouldn't, so to start, we shouldn't be paying out annually.
Correct.
Does everyone agree with that, at least, start there?
Agree with that.
Okay.
I know there's other cities that do it on vacation, but I don't think sick.
Yeah, so no annual payout for vacation.
Okay, I got that. Now what else? What about payout on separation?
I think it's, I mean, if,
It shouldn't be able to exceed, if we leave item 2 under 7A, item 2 under 7A at twice the annual current amount, then it shouldn't be able to exceed twice the annual current amount.
twice the annual current amount.
That's how much they can accrue.
Well, I'm looking at the current policy, the current city policy, which is upon separation, employees will be paid for all accumulated annual leave prorated to the date of separation.
Okay,
That's what the current policy is.
I like your sick leave payout. I would almost encourage the sick leave payout for the vacation payout, which comes a couple pages later, where you have 0% if you're less than 5 years, 30% if you're 5 years, you know, something like that, where it, but I don't know the answer there. Should you be able to pay out 8, like, say you accrue 8 weeks, do we pay out 8 weeks after when they retire?
We currently do pay out.
Is that normal? And
Most cities do pay out the full
full?
vacation balance upon separation.
Okay.
But again, the incentive is requiring and mandating so that those payouts are fairly minimal. Again, I worked 19 years in Clearwater, and when I left, I had 84 hours.
That seems reasonable to me.
can we go back to page 7-1, A2? We got to tackle a couple of things. What's the maximum vacation they can accrue based upon the years they've been with? How much vacation must they use every year?
Yep.
All right, or they forfeit it? And then what's the payout allowed? All right, so if you're here for 20 years, you get 4 weeks worth of pay. That means you can save up 8 weeks worth of pay. However, you must use 2 weeks minimum during that upcoming year. The problem is, if you save up your whole 8 weeks, you got to use all 4. You're going to lose 4 the next year. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I don't know that I can do the math. I follow what you're saying. You're never gonna have the full amount at the end.
You should never have the full amount at the end. So, but say an employee, for whatever reason, didn't expect that they were going to be offered a position making $100,000 more than they are right now. They have 2 weeks accrued, all right? They have 2 weeks accrued, which is what they should have used during the year, all right? Then I think that employee should be paid out that, because they didn't go beyond the maximum they're allowed to accrue.
Once you've been here 5 years.
Been here 5 years.
Yeah. What other opinions on this? I don't know that I can come to, I'd like to see the vacation filled in. We might revisit this. I feel like we made progress. Don't
Wanna do
pay
that?
out. Yeah.
My other question was, I'm assuming this is for people who are hired once this is going into effect, that anyone who's already here would be getting the payout that they expected based on the contract that they had when they were hired?
True, we'd have to,
Would be paid out that year, is that
out.
correct?
Well, we
That's
don't,
not-
go ahead, Rob.
not true. No, that's not true. They would be under this new policy, and their choice, if they don't like it, is to quit before this policy takes effect, so that they can avail themselves of the payout.
Is there any
But
way,
you can't maintain 2 separate systems where there is legacy employees sitting on all that they have accumulated,
Right.
and other employees not.
so we need to account for it in here that if they're underneath a certain system, they're definitely going to get paid out
They'll need to use them
Under-
now for the next
under
couple of years,
that.
I guess.
Does that make sense? They need to be, but you can write in here as a line, under the current system, they can be paid out one time to bring them in alignment with this. That would be fair to the employee. It's going to be hit to the
I would
budget.
not put that in the policy, though.
I think he budgets for that, yeah.
Yeah. Is there any way to do that, Mr. Eschenfelder?
I mean, we're already gonna miss this year, because it's gonna happen. We're not getting.
Yeah, because we're
So I
still
wouldn't
under
worry
the
about
old
it.
policy right now.
I think we're a ways off. I'd say let's note it and deal with it when that happens. Is that fair?
So when this is filled out, we'll come back to it in January? We're going to return to this section in January and look at it again when we have it filled out.
Yeah. Yeah, true. I forgot, we're not even until January.
But I think you could write it to say that there's a one-time payout for employees in place as of the effective date of the new personnel policy, but that payout must be taken prior to January 1st, 2025.
Okay.
Could that be put into the budget, Mr. Gomez, in
That's
time?
rea- That's reasonable.
Yes.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Good.
Because that
Yeah.
protects them, gives them what they expected, but also brings in alignment what we would have for a new policy too.
I think that makes
Yeah,
sense.
because I think most people take their vacation as much as they can.
Yeah.
And they should.
Is the pay plan document, does that account for, like, would that account for this right now of like knowing how many people who have accrued what they've accrued? And, I mean, you must already factor that into the budget anyway of these payouts. Like, I guess I'm wondering,
Yes and
you know,
no.
how many people there are who have like a bunch of leave already accrued.
Yes and no. We do budget if we know, but unfortunately, the city was not budgeting for some of these payouts. Just as I said at the last meeting, that departments were not budgeting for comp time payouts.
And they were
And
going over
even,
budget.
I'm sorry, and even overtime was not properly budgeted. We are now, but
So I'm confused. For section 7, leave of absence, vacation leaves, A, are we coming back to this in January? Or are we going to tackle it right now?
So vacation, for me, so some of it has to be filled in. We had some discussion on, I mean, we can continue to discuss it, just seemed like we sort of weren't.
Can
within the-
can we go back to 2 then? Because that's where we made the first change, and that's twice the annual current amount of vacation leave hours. That's the maximum they can accrue. Is everybody in agreement with that? Because that means if an employee leaves, that has to be paid out. if that's there. Does that make sense? Which could be, if they're 1 year, it could be 2 weeks. If it's 20 years, it could be 8 weeks. 1 year be 4 weeks if it's twice. 1 year could be 4 weeks if it's, no, it can't be because they have to use 2 weeks a year or lose it. So the first 4 years, they can't accrue vacation realistically. They can't. They either, they use it or they lose it.
But there also could end mid-year, which would have them still have them available, so that, well, so,
I would say can we put it in here that by the middle of the year? I mean, you have hurricane season, which it changes things, but by the middle of the year, they need to request vacations for that year? Because if you're telling them that they need to take vacation, then those managers need to be able to plan for their staff accordingly and not let everybody come and say, I want to take this vacation now at the end of the year, which is what's going to happen. So how do we tackle that?
No, I think similar to what you just said is you just schedule, I think at the beginning of the year, and have the departments just go through their schedules and come up with who's taking vacation when, so that you don't have everybody out at the same time. And
Yeah.
So
I've asked to try to get it ahead of time, and my employees don't necessarily know that what they're gonna take during the year, when.
yeah. Have you had issues with that? For me, does
never
it get
had a-
submitted for vacation and then you approve it?
I think in some departments, yes, particularly the larger ones such as fire and public works. Others, because they're so small, it's just kind of scheduled throughout. And we may have occasions where your small departments that are not necessarily always public facing may have one person in. So it can be difficult to fill all the time, but I mean, we'll be able to do it.
Can you say the 2 weeks that they would lose if they don't take it, those have to be scheduled by the middle of the year?
Yes, I think that's
'Cause
that's
that-
more than reasonable.
Because then it gives them the flexibility for anything
Sure,
else. And even
right.
if that 2 weeks needs to be changed, the department could always
Yeah, 'cause I
alter
think
it.
if
But
they
it
know a
gives them
year
a
in
guaranteed,
advance-
you're going to take vacation at this time.
Yeah, I
So
think
they
if
don't
they
lose
know a
it.
year in advance, they can work in 5, 6 weeks for that year, now and pay out, and, unless they did one more out, like you said, when the thing got done, it's possible. Because I have a lot of hours, I'm here all the time, I even work my holidays.
Right,
But I do need to be off, I would have to stop my flex time for a while with my workers, so that I could be off on
You gotta take
every
vacation
Friday and
like
Monday.
Kim.
Then
Yeah.
she
Take
need-
more
I mean,
vacation.
employees just need to take vacation. That's the bottom
Yeah.
line.
Yeah.
So are we all in agreement that employees may begin a new calendar year with a maximum of twice their annual current amount? Do you guys agree with that? Does anybody want more or less?
Twice or, I thought, so yes, that's fine, but didn't you say something about losing a couple weeks? I'm getting.
They're still going to accrue, they're at twice.
Okay.
During that next year, they can still accrue, but if they don't use, if they got 20 years and they're getting 4 weeks, they need to use those 4 weeks or they're going to lose every one of them. Because if all they can start the new year with is twice their current amount, they have to plan those vacations.
That's the current year when it gets adopted,
That's right.
yeah.
Employees may only begin a new calendar year with a maximum of twice the annual current amount.
Oh,
So basically,
Oh, no.
if they're paid 4 weeks a year, they can start the new year with 8.
Yeah.
They're going to gain 4 more during the year. They don't lose them. But on December 31st, if they haven't taken those 4 new weeks,
okay.
they would
I'm
lose them.
following. Okay.
They'll have 4 on the books, they can have 4 on the books.
You got to go, doctor?
Yeah, pretty soon.
Okay. Are you guys okay? She
That
has
sounds fine to me.
work to do, which is critical. Are you guys okay? Can we all continue?
Yeah,
I've got dinner guests sometime.
So you got to go too?
So
All right.
if we could go to.
Can we go for another 8 minutes and then wrap it up? Can we try to tackle this and finish it?
Let's do that.
Is that good?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. So we're back to this twice the annual amount. So if it-
Yeah, that sounds fine. I'd say just write it in like that.
are you guys okay with that too? Okay, then we go over to, oh God, where am I at? That's there. Then we're on 3, 4, 5, 6, the new 6, 7. We're getting rid of the current 7. Number 3 is going to be written for clarity. Number 9, what did we say to do with number 9?
Number 9 is out.
It's out, okay. 9 is out.
And I just had a general note here that we check all the section references at the end, because I think that one, although it's being removed, had a missed one, so just a note that we want to verify the section references at the end.
Cool. And add new ones if we need them.
Yes.
Yeah. So in this, where do we,
Sick leave is next, right? Are
but
we
where do
done?
where do we put in here that the employee, is it just that they can only accrue twice? Where do we put it in here to where it's explicitly stated that they understand you use it or you lose it?
I've written all those notes, and you'll see it when you see the next draft. I think I've captured everything that we've decided.
Good.
Do
Next.
you want to stop there, or do you want to move on to the sick leave and leave? Because we're going to go in 6 minutes.
Doesn't matter to
What
me.
would you guys like to do?
I think it may be, just my 2 cents, it may be better for you to pick up on sick leave next time, because then you'll see it rewritten based upon the conversation we've already had, and it might be more productive. Because I will build in what the city does and everything, but take out stuff that I know you guys want taken out.
No payout, right, on sick leave?
Correct.
Okay, and is there a maximum accrual for sick leave?
Right now, under the city's policy, there is not.
Can we continue on with that? Because say, you're planning on having a child and you're going to need to take 3 months off, that would provide you the time to get paid for 3 months.
Yeah.
Would that make sense? I wouldn't want to take away a person's ability
But there's
to
What-
be out when they need
short-term
to be out.
disability and FMLA, right, or for those types of things?
Well, it's FMLA, but I think we could, a recommendation is to create a separate category for paid leave for certain, such as maternity, paternity.
How many weeks would you be comfortable with for that? Because I'm open to that discussion.
Well, for maternity, a minimum of 12, I think the same, I mean, I don't,
They can use their sick time.
for paternity, I don't know. I'm 6 weeks, 10, I don't know. I took 3 weeks vacation and 1 week sick leave. I took 4 weeks off for the birth of both of my daughters. But I had enough hours accrued to do that. But not everybody can, it just doesn't work out necessarily for everyone. But again, that we do not offer paid maternity nor paid paternity, which I think we probably, something to consider.
Could you budget that?
Yes. Well, I think what we need to do is really come up with a budget for even when we can best estimate when somebody is going to retire from the city. And we may have a payout of, if there is one for sick or vacation. I mean, so yes, we could try to budget or have a separate fund available, and it gets transferred to the departments when that occurs. That's one way to do it.
Because they won't have that extra vacation time to turn it into maternity.
But if we don't pay out sick leave and let them, I would think it would be fair to let them accrue as much sick leave as they need, and then if something unforeseen happens, then they would have that. They're not going to cash out and cost the city, but if there really is a
Right.
crisis at some point down the road, then they can then
Yes.
rely on their
And
sick
that's
leave.
what some cities do, exactly that.
Seems reasonable to me. I mean, if you're not paying for it and
That way you're promoting health, too.
Right.
I mean, you really are promoting health. So
because
it's-
they can always keep it right. I mean, that sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah.
Again, not paying it out.
Okay, guys, we got 3 minutes. We have to wrap it up.
For the minutes, I just wanted to be clear about those holidays. Now, were we losing the New Year's Eve?
We didn't discuss
No.
losing any of them.
I don't think there was a final, but
The
again,
list,
just,
the current list in the city policy is going to be put into this policy.
Oh, okay.
I would recommend to leave as is.
I would
Are
recommend
you
to leave
saying
as
you
is.
well,
too.
my suggestion would be probably to add, I mean, I don't know, it gets to be a little sort of, but
Political.
if we were to add President's Day and Juneteenth and then consider probably New Year's Eve not being a holiday, mean, New Year's Eve is technically not a federal holiday to begin with, but typically, not typically, I mean, most cities follow federal holidays, not always. Certainly, school districts don't follow all the holidays either, federal holidays rather. So, I mean, really just something else to, part of your discussion going forward.
I don't get Martin Luther King Day off. I don't
Or
get
maybe
President's
just
Day.
keep it.
Nor Veterans Day.
and
But that's one of the
not
perks
taking
of,
President's
perks
Day.
of working for the city, though. You get more holidays.
I get two. I get two.
Sorry.
Do you want to strike New Year's Eve? Are you guys okay with that
Need to
before
talk
we
to
leave?
your boss.
Well, the other option, which maybe this is difficult to do, but we do something where they added, what did they do? We get 2 out of the 3 is the way they do it for us. We get to pick 2 out of, I think it's Easter, Martin Luther King Day, and President's Day. We get 2 out of the 3. So that could be an option? Or is that
Easter's
Not a-
difficult to
not a
manage?
Yeah, it's difficult.
Okay.
I would say let's
forego that.
set the schedule.
Okay.
Are you
That's-
meaning
I
Good
mean,
Friday?
From my
Yes.
perspective would be to strike New Year's Eve and add President's Day and Juneteenth.
Are you guys okay with
Difficult to
that?
me.
Or keep New Year's and strike President's Day.
President's Day is a federal holiday, and I think we should be celebrating for presidents, but that's just my,
Well, and they could take.
I'm a student
personal
of government. So I don't understand why we don't get President's Day, but I
I need you to go to work for Pinellas County Schools.
day. And they can take a personal day for New Year's Eve.
No one likes George and
Yeah,
Abraham
we have-
anyway.
we have the 2
All right,
floating
so
holidays also.
Yeah, that's
Manager,
right.
is what you're saying to use my list, which includes President's Day, and then also add Juneteenth?
That's what it sounded
And
like.
it'll be 2 personal days.
Are we,
Well, that's not changing.
are
but-
we
Right,
excluding
but he
New Year's or
didn't have
not?
2 on there.
So
New Year's Eve.
your list, which does not include New Year's Eve.
Leave
think-
that off.
I think his list as stated, is that correct? We're looking at it right now. Is
Yeah.
there
Yeah,
anything,
that's it.
is there anything missing there?
Yeah, I think there's,
Now, does Fire get that day off, or 2? I think they do.
I think
My only
that's,
question was, how long has the New Year's Eve day been a holiday here, and would it be negative influence on morale if, like, all of a sudden people have had that holiday for years and now it's getting quote-unquote taken away?
we're giving them
we're,
an extra,
we're adding an extra day.
and they can
Yeah.
take PTO for
And
it.
he's adding
They could
2
take
extra days.
PTO.
Well, if we add President's Day and
Is there such thing as
Juneteenth
PTO?
and take out New Year's Eve, you're adding,
P8.
we're all gaining 1 day.
Yeah, that's good, that's good.
I think that's a good thing.
And they can take a personal day.
Yes, you can,
for-
exactly. That's what the
Yeah.
personal, that's a really good question, but I think
Yeah.
should hopefully be,
And plus,
it should be
everybody's
eased
gonna
in
be
the.
made to take the
But
vacation time.
Also, I believe the clerk said that every 4th year, the presidential election day should be a holiday. Is that right, Clara?
Well, we're having our election a week later.
But I meant some cities give the,
How about we remove New Year's Eve and add in
You're right
that
about
every
that.
4th year, the election day, the major election campaign day,
National
that
election.
Tuesday should be a day off for city employees.
okay.
Is that,
Not the day of the election, but
should
the,
be a national?
No, election day.
The election day for the major election on every 4 years, which would be the years that end in 0004, 8/12.
that day. I'm the clerk.
It's also leap year.
So,
There we go.
so this list and then add the every 4-year thing.
Every
So
4th
New
thing.
Year's Day, Martin Luther King, President's Day, Memorial Day, Juneteenth, Independence Day, Labor Day, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, Thursday, Friday, Thursday and Friday, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and then in addition, elections every 4 years.
Well, guys, so, we haven't gotten to all the different leaves of absence rules yet, although some of you hopefully have read it. And one of those addresses election
Okay.
leave, voter leave. And so I think if we're going to do something, do it there and not on the list of holidays.
Okay,
Okay.
all right,
All right.
let's come back to that.
So we're going to return on, I believe, January 6th at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We'll pick up on page 7-4, sick leave, item B. Is that correct?
And no later than a couple days after Santa Claus comes, I will put out a new version that has red lines through where we leave off so you guys can pick up with this again and revisit some of it.
Okay, anybody have anything you want to add before I adjourn the meeting?
Yeah, and add me to that list to get that document so I can put it in the packet.
Well, yeah, it'll come to you and you got to put it out to them.
All right, okay. It is 6:32. I adjourn the meeting without objection. Is that the right way to say it?
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
You too.